hear some of those debates, but I guess some people might not. Oh boy, yeah, yeah. You'll make some friends on the old Modern Day Debate channel with that. All right, let's head on over to our main debate screen and we'll get started. So usually one-on-one, I do up to 8 minutes. If you need more, like, do you need more than 8? Yeah, okay. If you need a full 10, that's fine. Just usually sometimes people start to, like, usually on the live chat, I usually find that people are a little bit contentious after like 6 to 8 minutes. But yeah, yeah, we'll do a full 10. It's fine. We don't want to. We don't want to disappoint, do we? Yeah, yeah, you can all hear me. We're going to get started there, guys. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Um, yeah, let's get over to the mainstream and get started up.
All right.
All right,
Just
welcome
give
one
me a
and all
second.
to Modern Day Debate. This is Atheism or Christianity, which is true. We have Chris versus Apollos. And to get us started out, we have Apollos. You have up to 10 minutes on the floor. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm just going to share my screen real quick.
Yeah, when you get that up, then we will start the time.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
There we
It's a
go.
PowerPoint
Yeah.
presentation.
It is up and running, and I'll start the timer now.
Let's go. All right, thank you, Ryan. So for the purposes of this debate, I'll only be insisting that Christianity is falsified or verified on its core beliefs, to which I contend are the following: belief in the supreme divinity of a triomni, triadic God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and eternal life for those who confess his lordship. There are some important second-order beliefs as well, and while adjudicating these beliefs deserve discussion in the overall framework of Christian evidence, differing beliefs on the periphery of any field shouldn't discount the entire hypothesis. For example, the debate between string theory and loop quantum gravity doesn't disconfirm our findings in quantum physics. To demonstrate Christianity is less likely than atheism, I contend that these two issues are challenged, namely the evidence for the existence of God and the bodily resurrection of Jesus as signifying the Christian God's existence. And as for what I mean by demonstrate, I use the standard definition of evidence, namely that it makes a hypothesis more likely more than if not present. Now on to the resurrection of Jesus. Regardless of whether anyone ascertains the belief in the resurrection, any rational inquirer must explain the data surrounding the early Christianity phenomena. If it is the case that Jesus rose from the dead, then we are on good grounds to posit a Christian religion as an explanation. Our tested, tried, and true historical methods must likewise also be applied to Christianity. Let's start off with the source critical gospel arguments in order to go over all the relevant data. The New Testament, as historical reportage, asserts that the Gospels aim to faithfully report historical events, teachings, and actions of Jesus, rooted in eyewitness testimony or reliable secondary sources. The Gospel authors were serious historians who intended to convey factual accounts with integrity. If it is seriously the case that the Gospel authors were in a position to know the truthfulness or falsehood of the events that they attest to, then the probability of the reliability of the New Testament in reporting facts accurately is raised. By contrast, I do not claim that the Gospels were merely Greco-Roman biographies with authors who freely fictionalize events, nor do I advocate for wooden literalism that excludes paraphrasing, summarization, and thematic organization. For the New Testament originally circulated independently without audiences understanding them as divinely inspired dictation. These data points are important in assessing whether or not Jesus rose from the dead. We cannot rule out these sources as biased propaganda, similar to how we don't rule out eyewitness accounts of the Holocaust, Greco-Roman history, or the American Revolutionary War as needing to be corroborated by some disconnected third party free of bias. All accounts, ancient and modern, have an agenda. Here are some of the internal external clues that may indicate the trustworthiness of the Gospels. These are not exhaustive, but a lot of them have to do with the idea that they had to have been eyewitnesses close to the events portrayed. We're talking about local governments that left no records on written history save for the inscriptions they anchored towards that date. We're talking about real indicators outside of a vague appeal to church history for the traditional authorship of the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And just to be clear, we're not talking about Jerusalem being in Judea level of generic detail. We're talking about presenting information that only modern researchers have uncovered within the past 2 decades, and that's especially the case with onomastic congruence. There were no list of local Jewish names with statistical likelihoods assigned to them in the first century. 85% onomastic congruence versus Josephus's 6% is a grossly clear indicator that the gospel writers were accessing data that is orders of magnitude unlikely to be made up. Among the issues that I will contend in disagreement are that there are no analogous miracles to the resurrection that conflict with Christianity. The Gospels are not anonymous, that the virgin birth did occur, that the Gospel eyewitness testimony is reliable, and that miracles are possible. But we'll get into that later in the discussion period. And as for the Spider-Man fallacy, unlike in the modern world where we are free to Google any fact to our convenience, the ancients had no way of confirming the aforementioned details without having been close to the events at hand. Without arguing for a mechanism that rebuts how unreasonable, costly, and inefficient it would have been for the gospel writers to insert insider knowledge into supposedly historical inspired novels, the fallacy fails as a false analogy. Now, the minimal facts are not the only facts that demand an explanation. The minimal facts, according to Dr. Gary Habermas's dissertation and latest survey, are the list of facts conceded by the overwhelming consensus of historical critical scholarship pertaining to early Christianity, including unbelieving, skeptical academics, atheists, and agnostics. I don't set this as a necessary criteria. I only say for at least these core facts, nearly universal scholarly agreement is to be expected under these facts being true. Utilizing this consensus, therefore, is not a hard deductive appeal to authority, but just a tool to assess where people can find these arguments. Take, for example, the empty tomb. Although not a unilateral consensus, the growing majority of critical scholars believe the empty tomb of Jesus was found by the women of Jesus' ministry. Because this number is now at 80% of historical critical academics, according to Habermas's latest survey, it's on its way to becoming a minimal fact. Now, as far as the best explanation of the data is concerned, people claim to have experienced encounters with Jesus after his death. The witnesses are not uniform groups of religious zealots. They're from diverse backgrounds with different educations and social standings. They didn't just catch momentary glimpses of him, but their experiences were rich and multisensory, hearing Jesus' voice, touching him, engaging in prolonged conversations with him, and sharing meals in his presence. They included times, places, and even reactions of the witnesses, and they claim to have even heard Jesus himself tell them that he rose from the dead. All this making something like an ordinary bereavement hallucination incredibly more unlikely. As for collusion, interdisciplinary scholar and analytic philosopher Dr. Lydia McGrew has successfully shown that multiple independent attestation under strict epistemic controls need not be literally independent in order to have the relevant causal and problematic independence needed for our probabilistic independence needed for our investigation. For example, the reports of eyewitness testimonies to a bank robbery don't necessarily have to be 100% isolated from any sort of interaction in like a police report, say for example, in order to raise the probability of the overlap of their testimonies being the best explanation. Philosophers and statisticians highlight that literary dependence is primarily about textual or narrative relationships, while probabilistic dependence is about conditional and confirmation and statistical correlation. And for more information on how this sorts of like Bayesianism mathematics works, I implore the audience to visit these recently published probabilistic analysis papers. They show that the type of independence needed, perhaps surprisingly, relates to the negation of the hypothesis, as opposed to its directly perceived coherence. The question is not whether the Gospels have contradictions, rather, it is given their acknowledged differences, are there undesigned and independent coincidences affirmed by the eyewitnesses themselves likely under alternative hypotheses like collusion. In short, their dependence is purely literary, but for the purposes of probabilistic calculation, their eyewitness attestations are independent. Likewise, even if Matthew or Luke's narrative structure is literarily dependent on Mark, the distinctive M, L, Q material contributes independently and probabilistically to the historical confirmation, indicating probabilistic independence remains intact. Furthermore, these individuals would have expected a hostile reception when they started spreading their message of the resurrected Jesus. No formal chance to recant was needed when they had their whole lives to recant their message and end the real possibility of an impending death by persecution. To the Gentiles, the Christian message would have been repugnant, worshiping a man shamefully executed on a cross and believing in a physical resurrection, an idea antithetical to prevailing pagan beliefs of the time. For the Jews, the idea of a crucified Messiah was scandalous, shattering long held expectations of a triumphant leader. Jesus' death left his followers in disarray, fleeing persecution and facing shattered ideals. If they were going to make something up, why make up something that they know will get them persecuted and very possibly killed for no earthly reward? And concerning their one-way ticket to hell, if Jesus was in fact a conspiracy, Paul concludes the following in 1 Corinthians 15. And if Christ has not been raised, then our proclamation is in vain and your faith is in vain. We are found to be misrepresenting God, or as some translations render liars, because we testified of God that he raised Christ, whom he did not raise, if it is true that the dead are not raised. Also, by the way, I think that the Shroud of Turin can't be explained through naturalistic means. The radiocarbon dating on this has been busted years ago, but I'm more than happy to get into that later. So in conclusion, if Craig wants to interact with this argument, he must do at least one of the following things. He can choose to go the Humean route and say miracles don't happen because they're unlikely to be true. He can attack the data itself, and he can attack the explanation of the data by giving a better one. Because until we are given any reason to think something else is more likely, we are on good grounds to think that that God rose Jesus from the dead, and that Christianity is true. So I implore the audience to ask their questions sincerely, and with that, I'd like to close out and yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
You got it. Well, thank you so much, Apollos, for your introductory statement. We're going to kick it over to Craig in just one moment, but I want to remind everybody that, once again, thank you so much for being here. Smash the like button if you haven't already, and help boost us up in the algorithm. We're live right now, so we'll let Apollos end the screen share. We'll head on over to the main screen. So, yes, if this is your first time at Modern Day Debate, maybe it's not, but we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, politics, and religion. We do hope you feel welcome here. We are going to take Q&A at the end, so if you have a question for either of the speakers you see on screen, you've got something itching that you want to ask one of them, get it into a super chat and we'll ask it with priority at the end of the discussion. But without further ado, let's hand it on over to you, Craig. You got up to 10 minutes, and I'm going to start that. Well, do you need to screen share?
No, I won't be screen sharing or anything.
Right.
I'm still working on getting my setup since I've moved, so I'll just be talking.
10 minutes on
That's
the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hey, hello. Thank you for having me on again, Modern Day Debates. So let's just get this out of the way. No one in the history of ever has seen a god. Not yours, not theirs, not any of them. Gods used to live in the mountains, then in the sky. Now they've been pushed so far back they're just apparently invisible, inaudible, and totally allergic to evidence. But trust me, he loves you, and unless you're gay, then apparently he's got beef. Christianity isn't just a belief in a god, it's belief in a very specific story. That a talking snake tricked a woman into eating magic fruit, and that broke the universe. So now we need to symbolically eat a man's flesh and drink his blood to make it better. Yeah, right. That's what my notes say. Sorry, but if I heard that outside of church, I'd probably call a therapist. Here's the harsh truth: no god of any kind has ever done anything. Not a miracle, not a moment, not a shred of measurable, testable, repeatable evidence. All we've ever had is storytelling and feelings. And I hate to break it to you, but if your best proof is I felt God's presence, then congratulations. So have cult members, schizophrenics, and people tripping on mushrooms. Faith without evidence isn't a virtue. It's what we teach kids who still believe in the Tooth Fairy and Santa. If your worldview can't survive without blind belief, then maybe it's a time to grow up. Atheism isn't a claim to know everything. It's just the recognition that none of the God claims, and especially not Christianity's, stand up to any kind of scrutiny. The universe works perfectly fine without gods. Reality doesn't need a ghost in the sky pulling levers, so unless you're holding some actual evidence, the logical conclusion is very, very simple. There is no God. And atheism is the only position that takes that truth seriously. I just want to quickly address a couple of the things that my opponent said. All right, so he mentioned about the eyewitness accounts of Jesus for anonymous gospels written decades after the event, with contradictions that so blatant they make a flat earther's compass look reliable. Let's break down some key contradictions that absolutely wreck the idea that the Bible is a reliable source full of consistent testimonies. Contradictions in the resurrection story. Who went to the tomb? Well, Matthew 28:1 says Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, where Mark 16:1 says Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Solomon, whereas Luke 24:10 says Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James and others, whereas John 21 says only Mary Magdalene. So which was it? One woman or an entire caravan? The roster changes with every gospel like a badly organized D&D campaign, not very reliable. Was the tomb open or sealed? Matthew 28:2. An earthquake opens the tomb when the women arrive. Mark 16:4 and Luke 24:2 and John 21. It's already open. So either they witnessed a dramatic quake or it was already open. Pick a version, please. Who was at the tomb? Matthew 28:2-5. One angel sitting outside the tomb. Mark 16:5. One young man inside the tomb. Luke 24:4. Two men inside. John 20:12. Two angels sitting inside the tomb. Man, angel, one, two, inside, outside. This isn't a divine account. It's pretty much a biblical guess who at this point. What did the women do after seeing the tomb? Well, Mark 16:8 says they fled and told no one because they were afraid. Matthew 28:8 says they ran to tell the disciples full of joy. Luke 24:9-10 says they immediately told the apostles. John 22 says Mary ran and told Peter and the disciple Jesus loved. Well, you can't both tell me no one and everyone. That's not how narratives or, reality works. I mean, I could go on with the list of contradictions, but the claim that the Bible is full of eyewitness testimonies that are in any way accurate is completely false. And you can find this out by simply reading the Bible and finding that nearly every page contradicts the one previously. There was no eyewitness testimonies. There was nothing written at the time of that happening that was in the Bible. Everything was written decades to centuries after. To be 100% clear, the Bible contains zero eyewitness accounts of anything, because none of those people that apparently witnessed it were the ones that wrote the Bible. So yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous to claim that the Bible is in any way a reliable source of history. Well, let's look at the biblical flood. We know that didn't happen because all of the other cultures around the world would have, pointed out that happening, plus the sediments and everything that we would have seen. It says they got 2 of every animal on a wooden boat. Yeah, sure, millions of species, no extinction events happening. The Bible is a ridiculous story written by sheep herders that thought that there was a dome above them and had no clue about the rest of the world around them. It wasn't written by anyone that knew Jesus or was close to Jesus. It is simply a book written by people that heard a story and then told it again. And if you read the Bible and compare it to any stories from previous religions, you'll find they tell the same story over and over and over. The Bible isn't an original story. It was plagiarized from previous religions. So Christianity can't be true if it's plagiarized from other things. So there's nothing in Christianity that, especially in the Bible specifically, that would say that Christianity is true, right? So at the end of the day, considering that nearly every culture has invented its own creation myth, from gods breathing life into clay to turtles holding up the earth to sky beings hurling lightning bolts, and not a single one has any actual evidence behind it, the logical position isn't to pick your favorite story and declare it truth. The rational starting point is this. These are all human-made stories, none of them proven, none of them, all of them competing, and all of them suspiciously similar. So until there's compelling, testable, objective evidence for any of it, the base assumption should be and must be there is no God. You are not born believing in gods. Somebody has to teach you, and that should tell you everything you need to know. I yield the rest of my time.
All right, you got it. We're going to get into the open discussion. Oh, I'll just adjust the preamp there. Tried to fix you guys up so it looks like you're looking at each other. Don't mind me. So yeah, thanks everybody who's smashed that like button. I see that's going up. We appreciate you. Once again, we're going to take those questions at the end. We also want to hear from you, so I'm going to pop a poll in the live chat and see what the demographics are of our audience right now, and see what you guys think. So without further ado, then let's get into that open discussion. Let's go over to Apollos and give some of your thoughts on Craig's introduction.
Yeah, for sure. Craig, I have one question for you to start us off. If you, an atheist, could give no sufficient explanation better than Jesus rose from the dead, wouldn't it make Jesus' resurrection the best explanation? Why or why not?
Well, there's no evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. There's only contradicting stories that tell different accounts of someone apparently not dying. There's absolutely zero evidence of Jesus rising from the dead, so that's not an assumption I would make. It's simply a story with nothing behind it. No eyewitness accounts exist of Jesus rising from the dead. Nobody that was apparently at that tomb wrote anything that is in the Bible. So I have absolutely zero reason to believe or even, consider the possibility of a magical thing happening in a cave that
Okay.
doesn't actually
So two
have.
things, pretty much contradictions, and the gospel authors were anonymous or not the eyewitnesses. So
Yeah,
over
yeah.
here I have the rebuttals to the classical contradictions raised at the empty tomb narrative portrayed in the four gospels. I mean, John itself says that there were more than one women, because Mary Magdalene says they have taken him and we do not know where he laid them. The gardener laid them, implying that there was more than one woman. So yeah, it's just literary spotlighting. Um, Open tomb or closed tomb. Matthew used the aorist participle, which could be, and in some versions is translated with the English past perfect, for an angel of the Lord had descended. So in other words, the tomb was open before the women got there. Who was at the tomb? Once
Okay, well,
again,
if
like
I
this
could
is
just
literary.
respond to one of them at a time, or rather than you just
All right, just
Yeah.
if
going
you want to
through
Is
a
jump
my
in,
bunch of
screen
Joel.
sharing,
things.
by the
Yeah,
way?
Yeah, it sure
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
If you want to just give me a heads up when you do the screen share, just so we don't miss it. But yeah, go ahead there, Craig, and respond to one of those arguments that he's laid out there.
Yeah, no, it's not just literary kind of games. There is literal contradictions. Matthew 28:1 says Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, whereas John 21 literally says only Mary Magdalene. It's
It
not
doesn't
just
say
me
that.
going. Well, it literally does.
No, it says that no. There's implied that there were several women that went to the tomb because
Well, no, that's
she
your
uses the
implication. The words don't actually say that. The words literally say only Mary
and it
Magdalene.
literally
Nowhere in
says
John
it's
21.
literally the
One
first
second there,
person
Craig.
plural.
You cut him off there, so
Um,
let's let him finish his sentence there. Go ahead
yeah,
there.
it's the first person plural. But yeah, uh, as far as who was at the tomb, again, literary spotlighting. The white cloth shows
Define literary
that
spotlighting, please.
literary spotlighting is the idea that when written from one perspective, they only tell a certain amount of information instead of some other information that the author redacts for whatever reason that they want.
Yeah, none of that is happening here. No one's redacting anything. We are simply pointing out that there is very different accounts in the Bible. You are just trying to say, oh, well, this little translation might mean this also as well. But when you actually read the text, they completely contradict each other, especially when you talk about what the women did after seeing the tomb. Where Mark 16:8 says they fled and told no one because they were afraid. Whereas Luke 24:9-10 says they immediately told the apostles. That's not just a little mistranslation. That is literally different stories about what happened when the apparent magical thing happened. And you can say, well, that's just an implication as much as you want. But that's all the Bible is a bunch of people making implications about it the way they want it to appear. The fact is, there is straight up contradictions, and you can play literary games and say, well, it might mean this as much as you want. It doesn't change the fact that the Bible straight up contradicts itself from page to page.
That's exactly the point. I contest the contradictions, but in any case, what is
So,
your explanation behind the early Christianity phenomena?
what do you mean the early Christianity phenomena? Describe
So
that.
I assume you don't take it that Jesus rose from the dead. So how
Well,
do
no,
you
I don't
exact?
believe in Jesus being a magical god. There is a slight chance that he didn't die and then actually got out of a coma a couple of days later or something like
What?
that. But let's be clear, magic isn't a thing, so no, nobody rose from the dead.
Okay, so you're saying you're trying to say the swoon theory. Can you name me
I'm trying to
one
say what,
single
sorry?
the swoon theory, the idea that Jesus survived crucifixion? Can you name me one example in Roman history where someone survived a full crucifixion and a career for
No.
him?
No,
Okay,
but
yeah,
that
that's what I
doesn't mean that
thought.
it couldn't happen. Again, you are just making assumptions, but this you don't. I don't need to argue about. Oh, well, this could have happened or this could have happened because you have no evidence that it actually happened. Let's be clear: you do not have any eyewitness accounts of Jesus rising from the dead. None exist.
Okay, so let's get to that. So like
It's a yes
Gospel.
or no question. Do you
No, no,
have
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
eyewitness?
yeah.
No,
We have
let me
eyewitness
let me
accounts.
ask a yes or no question,
Yeah,
please.
yes,
Do you
yes.
have an eyewitness account, someone that was there at the tomb that witnessed it all happening, that then wrote it in the Bible?
Yeah, like we have the beloved disciples' testimony that he went to the empty tomb. We have Mark's gospel, which is
And
Peter's
he wrote that in
testimony.
the Bible himself.
So this is the problem. So this is the internal anonymity
No, it's a
critique, the
yes
idea
or no
that
questions. Please, when I ask a yes or no question, I would like a yes or no answer. Did that
okay.
disciple himself write that thing in the Bible? Yes or no?
I mean, the beloved disciple says this is the beloved disciple that
It
writes
was a
these
yes or
things.
no question. I would
Yeah, so
appreciate
yes,
when I
yes,
ask a yes or no. So
yes, yes.
the beloved, the person you are describing as the beloved disciple, actually has his own passage that he wrote in the Bible. Is that right?
I believe that he authored it, yes.
Uh,
He might have used a
so
scribe, but like,
you
yeah.
believe that he authored it, and what evidence do you have that matches up with biblical scholars that he authored it, and why is he not named as the author in the Bible?
All right, trying
Well,
to
let's
give
start off
Apollos a
with,
little space here, okay, Craig?
yeah,
Just
yeah,
1 second.
yeah.
Oh
It's all
no,
right, buddy.
with all due respect, I don't give Christian apologetics space. I hammer.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. You can calm down. But as
Oh
far
no,
as like
no,
internal,
please do not tell me to calm down. That's highly patronizing. Let's be clear. You worship an evil
all
deity. I
right,
do
yeah,
not
I'm gonna cut
respect
you
that.
off.
All right, we are
I'm gonna
just gonna
answer the
just
question
reel it in.
regarding
Keep
internal
on.
Yes,
anonymity.
yes.
Internal anonymity was the norm, but
Patronizing
that
will
does
not
not
happen.
mean that the Gospels actually circulated anonymously. No scholar thinks that these works were anonymous, yet their name, like their actual name of the author, is not included in the body of the text. Think of like Xenophon and his Anabasis, Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, works of Polybius, Diodorus, Livy, Tacitus. So the idea
So, all
that
right, could you point to the passage that this person wrote, please? The exact words that are in the Bible that are related, and point to him being the author, not someone else. Because no scholar agrees with you. Just be clear. There is no
that's
biblical scholar
wrong.
that agrees with you.
There is a tradition of liberal scholars who would say that the gospel writers were anonymous, but no, that's not the case at all. There have been
Well,
many.
anonymous wouldn't mean that it was that person, so they don't agree with you. And no biblical scholar says that the person that you claimed wrote that passage actually wrote it. So you are just saying that you think this is the case because otherwise
So
you
one
don't
of the
have an
most striking
eyewitness
features of
testimony.
traditional
I was
authorship
in
of the
the. I'm
gospels is
so
the
sorry.
unanimous.
All right,
I'm so sorry
there's been a
Dude,
that
lot.
calm
the
down, calm
beginning.
down. No,
Hold
no,
on,
seriously,
hold on,
seriously.
hold
I
on,
mean
hold
this
on.
genuinely.
Hold on. You're both cutting each other off quite a little bit here, but I am going to be fair, Craig. You are not giving a lot of space for Apollos to really flesh out his thoughts here. So yeah, if you do want to ask yes or no questions, that's fine. But most people do want to clarify why yes, why no. Okay, so let's just try to make some space. Over to you,
Yeah,
Apollos.
it doesn't mean he has to babble then for 10 minutes about things that don't answer the
Yeah, so
question. The fact is, there is no. Hold on, let me
there's
finish my
universal
thought. Let me
attribution
please
from the
just
early
finish my
church
thought.
from
Last
Give me a
thought.
chance to just
geographical
finish my
Five,
thought.
dispersion.
5 seconds, Craig, and then just give him
Yeah,
some space
no.
after. Last thought.
All right, I'm just going to simply ask the question again. Show me the passage that this person wrote with proof that they wrote it.
With wait, what are you saying? Like no one
You
said
said
that.
that there's a passage by the person that witnessed the tomb being opened and
It's in
Jesus
John
rising from
21.
the
Give me a
dead.
second. Calm down.
Right. Please do not tell me to calm down
I
again.
will tell
Do
you to
not
calm
patronize.
down.
No,
I
no,
will
don't
tell you to calm
patronize.
down
Do not
again.
patronize me. Do not tell me to calm down. You don't get to tell me to calm
John
down.
21:24. Get wrecked.
That passage is written by that guy.
Yeah,
Have you got the
or at
proof
least
that it was
authored by
written?
it.
Have you got proof that
So,
he was the
if
author?
I can just like please like continue on. Like
Well, no,
there's
no. Sorry,
geographical wide
I
distribution of the
don't
titles.
want you to run
This
away from
guy's
the argument.
worried.
Do you have proof that he was
I
the
never
author
I never
of
said there
that
was
passage?
100% proof. I said there were indicators that make his
All
authorship
right, so no
likely.
proof. There's indicators
All right.
is not proof.
All right, we're gonna
Do
give
you, like,
Apollos a chance here.
Okay,
Like
so
I
I
said,
already defined what I meant by evidence at the
1
beginning
second, Craig,
that
please.
there are indicators that make it likely to be true. So yeah, here are some examples of like some works in antiquity that are internally anonymous, but no serious scholar thinks that these people didn't write these works. The emergence of gospel titles are all universal in the manuscripts, the early manuscripts. And so there was a practical need to give these titles to these gospels because, like, with the varying similarities and undesigned coincidences between these gospels, like, there would have been a practical need to identify them by their author, by their name. Hostile corroboration, non-Christian sources such as critics of Christianity indirectly affirmed the traditional authorship of the Gospels, such as Celsus, the heretical groups like the Gnostics, The lack of alternative attributions from critics or heretics strongly supports the authenticity of the traditional names.
All right,
There's
before you move
internal
on,
evidence.
before you move on from
He's
that
just going to
slide,
waffle
let's-
on and on. This is what I mean.
All right.
He's
Well,
just waffling.
No. Like I said, we're going to jump in here. We're going to give a chance to respond. So if you want to go back to the previous slide and let Craig have a little bit of back and forth here on some of those thoughts, and then we'll carry on. But yeah, I don't mind you keeping the screen share up. But yeah, we'll try to keep it going.
So it's very simple. He's mentioned only in the Gospel of John, never by name. This figure is supposedly someone close to Jesus, and some church traditions later claimed it was John the apostle, but the text never says that. There's nothing there that ever says that the person that was there wrote to that passage. It's an anonymous author.
Literally
the Gospel
does.
of John doesn't claim an author. It refers to the disciple who Jesus loved in the third person, as if the writer is watching from the outside. And it's like saying, and then the most handsome, brilliant guy in the room asked the smartest question. It sounds sus. You know why? Because it is. If your source can't even name itself, why would I trust it? This is how ridiculous your argument is. Your argument is literally,
5 seconds.
I can interpret this as this guy possibly knew this person that wrote this passage. You do not have an eyewitness account unless you lie and claim you do.
Okay, so I guess we can't trust like Philo, Plutarch, Porphyry, Philostratus, Nepos, Tacitus, Lucian of Samosata, just because,
No, because there's no
the body
evidence
of
of
their
any
text
of
is
this.
internally anonymous.
There's no evidence of any of
Dude,
this.
calm
so no,
down.
you
Let me
wouldn't trust it.
let me finish the thought, all right? No, seriously, man.
You asked me a question,
down.
I responded.
If
you
I
ask
never
me a
said-
question, I will
I
respond.
never asked a question, but
All right,
okay.
You said, so
like-
we can't trust these, and I responded. Are you unaware of how questions
all right.
work?
No,
It
I'm-
was quick.
questions
I'm
work.
saying-
it was pithy. He said no. Let's carry on.
Okay. Let's move on to something that I didn't really get to talk about last debate. The idea of miracles. Do you think
There's no evidence any miracle has ever happened ever.
really? So not even
no,
like
there's not. There is literally only people going, well, I think that's a miracle because of this, and I don't understand how it happened.
All right. Well, let's see what
Right?
Apollos
Prayer
has
doesn't
to-
work.
Let's see what Apollos has to present here before you pre-saddle. All right. And if you're correct, then that's great. Great for you. But we got to give Apollos a chance to make his case. All right.
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. We have modern cases of miracles. Chris Gunderson, idiopathic gastroparesis from 2 weeks old, required G-tube and J-tube feeding for 16 years, and after Pentecostal healing service, he was pretty much healed.
Is
We
there any
also
evidence
have-
that's a miracle and not some kind of medical phenomenon? Because, the human body, we don't understand everything about it. You are just making the assumption that is a miracle. That is not magic.
Well-
These things can happen. Miracles.
what mechanism do you
hold
have
on,
for-
hold on. Words I am saying. Miracles are things that cannot be explained, by normal physics or medicine. Someone getting better that wasn't expected to is something that can be explained by medical stuff. There's no evidence that's a miracle. You are just making the assumption that is a miracle.
Okay, so what is your objection, that medicine can explain it, or?
Yeah, well, there's no evidence that that was magic. There could be that his body repaired itself and then did the things that it needed to do, and whatever the medicine was working. And there's no evidence that God did that. You're just assuming that whatever happened here was a miracle with no evidence to back it up. I'm sorry, but you can go screw with your assumptions because I don't accept them.
So I don't even understand what you're saying, man.
I'm aware you don't understand what I'm saying. You think that magic is real.
Okay.
You are making the assumption that thing that you just said, you are making the assumption that the thing that you just said was a miracle with no evidence to suggest that it is a miracle.
Well, let's let Apollos define a miracle for himself, so okay, and then we'll carry on. So,
an act only explainable by God, or likely to be explained by God.
You would need to prove God first, so you can't
Well, no,
explain
because
God.
people think a posteriori all the time in terms of being one of coming up with updating their model. So think about solar neutrinos.
Hey,
our standard model of
he's waffling again.
No,
He
he's
just
making
waffles.
Neutrinos
he's
from the sun
making this is his argument. If you
consistently
don't like
measured
it,
fewer
let us
neutrinos
know.
than predicted by
It's not an
standard solar
argument. It's just a
models.
waffle.
So like
All right, dude. So
the
just
amount
break
of
this
solar
down to the
neutrinos that
basic.
were being observed conflicted with our current solar model, and so they had to update their solar model to be in line with the evidence, and that's
Cool.
basically
That's
what we're
nothing to do
doing.
with miracles, right? So
No, yes, it does
here's a
because
challenge for you,
no,
dude.
no,
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 it
no, no.
doesn't. Here's a challenge for you, buddy. Here's a challenge for
buddy.
you.
Here's the thing, buddy. Here's the thing, buddy.
Let me ask you.
No. Let him finish his thought. He has one little tag on, and then it's your turn. All right, you get a nice little wrap up on your sentences there, Craig. So we're gonna give him a wrap up. So Apollos, if you want to put a bow on what you're
Yeah,
saying
so
there, we'll
so
hand it back.
basically the whole idea behind this is that scientists all the time come up with models that aren't proven first, and then they like find the evidence for it. No, they find the evidence, see if
They
this
don't
model
assume
matches
magic,
up
though.
the evidence, and then they a posteriori conclude that that model was correct. The same thing with the standard model of the standard solar model, and
You
that's
can't tell me
basically
this
how
isn't
Bayesianism
waffling.
works.
Yeah,
Oh,
none of
man.
that has anything to do with miracles. That's not
Yeah, it does,
science.
because it means that I don't have to
None
prove
of. I
God
just let you
exists.
waffle for 5 minutes. Be quiet. Yeah. So none of that has anything to do with miracles. When science discovers something we don't understand, we then develop models to try and explain it, and then make predictions with that model to see if we can falsify that model. That's not saying that magic did it. There is no explanation for miracles. There is no experiment to test for miracles. There is no
Oh,
model to put forward to say, well, we can predict that a miracle will happen. It's very, very simple. Unless you can show me a miracle happening, give me a video of it, a record of it, show me a miracle being conducted, and prove to me that that is the direct result of God doing something. Otherwise, you have no evidence that miracles exist other than your pathetic childlike faith that God did it.
so how do you explain the Shroud of Turin?
The Shroud of Turin. Well, you're going to say that the carbon dating is debunked, but that's really because you do not understand carbon dating. We can get into the physics of that on another debate if you like, but I
Okay,
would, in
so what's
fact,
your explanation? I asked
I'm
you a
in the middle
question.
of
I asked
talking.
you a
I'm in the middle of
question.
talking. I'm in the middle of talking. Right. There is many ways to explain the Shroud of Turin, and for those specifics, as I'm not an expert in it, I would direct you to the channel Voice of Reason. No, sorry, not Voice of Reason. My friend's channel. I can't even bloody remember the name of it. Very good friend of mine that I do Friday Star Trek D&D with. His channel has actually covered all the Shroud of Turin stuff, but the fact is carbon dating on it show that it is not what you guys claim to be. I'm not going to argue with you about the physics of carbon dating because I know you don't understand
At the
physics.
very least, Craig, let's let Apollos make the argument. We have a Christian audience that also wants to hear the arguments, and like I say, it's expected that you're not going to agree with either the framing or the argument itself. That's expected.
Yeah,
so
I
the
do
problem
just
with
want to point out how he keeps changing the subject. The Shroud of Turin isn't a miracle.
Then
It's
what is
just
it? What is
something.
it?
It's something that you claim shows that Jesus existed. That is not a miracle being performed.
All right,
That I don't.
Apollos, what do you claim
So
the Shroud of Turin to be? Let's let Apollos have some floor time here.
The
Okay.
radiation from Christ's resurrection.
what kind of radiation?
I don't know. Just like
So
hold
you
on,
don't know. I'm sorry, you can't claim that there was a radiation unless you can determine which radiation it was. Radiation is a very specific thing. What radiation was given during Jesus's resurrection, and what powered that, please?
one that would have produced like a negative Anyway, this is irrelevant to the topic.
No,
Like,
no,
what
no,
is
it's
your
not. You've just no, it's not relevant. I'm going to push you on this. You've just made a very specific claim that there was radiation produced
yeah.
when Jesus resurrected. What radiation and what residuals did it leave behind that we could detect?
A
Because we
superficial
are very
image.
good at
A
detecting
superficial
radiation.
image.
So no, so radiation doesn't make. That's not what radiation is. Superficial image isn't radiation. You just claimed that there was radiation. There would be residual from that. What kind of radiation was it? And unless you can tell me what kind of radiation it was, you can't use this as evidence.
Wait, what are you even saying? Like,
You said that his radiation camp coming from his resurrection. Give me the full story. Tell me what kind of radiation and how it interacted with that shroud. Specifically, give me the mechanics behind it. Otherwise, you have no argument other than, oh, it was radiation. You know who else has a story about radiation and magic happening? That's how the Hulk got his powers. You are giving me the same kind of evidence that there is for the Hulk. Radiation did this thing. We don't know how, but
Does
it
Hulk
did
have the
it.
Shroud of Turin?
Well, Hulk clearly got his powers from radiation, and your magic radiation that you don't know the kind of radiation or how it interacted with any of the materials somehow left an afterprint on the shroud that is apparently the face of Jesus. What kind of radiation was it specifically, and how can we test for that?
UV or particle radiation.
What kind?
I don't know.
Well, then you don't get
Why,
to use this as evidence unless you
why
can give me
not?
the full
Why
because you
not?
don't understand what you're talking about with physics and
But you
radiation.
don't understand what you're talking
I
about. You
understand
never gave
physics.
me an explanation.
I have
You
a
never
degree
gave me
in
an
physics.
explanation.
I have a degree in physics, so I
Cool.
understand
Cool.
physics.
Give me
and
the
I have
explanation. Give me the
and I have a
explanation.
degree in nuclear engineering, so I understand
All right,
how
folks. So just for a
radiation
summary,
interacts
he's
with
not giving an
things.
explanation
I'm
for
trying to.
the Shroud of Turin.
If you want to, you're not
I'm just
giving an
gonna move
explanation
on.
either. You
Like,
are just saying it's a radiation, whereas you haven't said what kind of radiation.
one that
I'm
would
telling
have
you that
left a 3D
radiation
image,
doesn't
one that
work
would
like
have
that.
left like a photo
Radiation,
negative.
which
1 second,
kind of
Greg.
radiation specifically?
I don't know. UV
Well,
or
then you don't
particle
get to use it as
radiation.
evidence unless you've got the full story.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, absolutely makes sense because
So
you
your
can't tell me
proposition. So your proposition.
how that radiation did the thing that you claim. Just like we don't
I
know
can't
how
tell
the
you how
gamma
you grew up.
radiation
I can't
turned
tell you
Hulk
how you
into
grew
what
up.
he is.
I can't tell you how you grew up and became a person. So therefore, you don't exist.
I can tell you how I grew up and became a person. I can tell you how you grew up and became a person. There's no problem with that. But that is not a thing to do
No,
with the fact that you are
no,
claiming there is a
no.
radiation that did a thing that radiation doesn't do, and you can't even tell
What
me
does it
what
then?
kind of radiation
What
it
does it
is.
not do? What does it not do? I'm genuinely
It
curious.
doesn't leave a perfect imprint from somebody's face. Radiation doesn't do that.
If there was enough radiation, it would.
What kind of radiation?
Really high energy UV or particle radiation. Anyway,
And
let's move
how
on.
would really high energy or UV radiation emitting from the face of Jesus interact with that cloth to leave that specifically? What are the mechanics behind that, please?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've already established that this is a
therefore we are
wall we
going to
bet.
dismiss this evidence
right.
because claims made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
All right, so we've already
Okay, we've
moved through this
let's
one.
talk about
move somewhere else.
eyewitness testimony. Have you actually studied
You
eyewitness
don't have any
testimony?
eyewitness testimony.
Hold on.
Have you
Greg.
actually studied the mechanics of eyewitness testimony?
The mechanics of eyewitness testimony. That
Yeah,
is
how it
somebody
can be
seeing
reliable.
a thing happening.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, nobody, absolutely nobody that saw Jesus or lived with Jesus or interacted with Jesus
You're making a bunch of
wrote a
claims.
passage in the Bible. There is no eyewitness testimonies. None
Paul,
exist.
Like, dude, come on, man.
All right.
This is so bad.
Dude, come on, man. You've resorted to
All
dude,
right,
come
all
on, man. Brilliant.
Let's let him have a chance.
No,
I'm just gonna place you
dude.
on a soft mute there, Craig. Just give him a chance to run through. Like I said, if it's really bad, like our audience is not so silly that they need you to outline every last little thing for them. Like some people are going to be able to look at this and be able to make their own determinations.
Yeah, so
But let's
I
let
just
Apollo's go
I
ahead.
just encourage everyone to actually study the science behind eyewitness testimony as they relate to the Gospels. It's not a question of whether or not eyewitness testimony can be reliable, but under what circumstances generate that reliability. The gist is usually recalled as opposed to minor or more granular details, so the Gospels agree in like the major points. Modern memory studies often fail to reproduce scenarios where personal event memories are passively freely recalled. Um, and then false memories tend to reconstruct details from accurate memories as opposed to radically alter what occurred. Low frequency events are more memorable than everyday details, miracles. So like why the teachings of Jesus were easy to remember. Um, there are various characteristics embedded within Jesus' teachings that allow for the passing down of that tradition for years on. And IP did an excellent video on this showing that Inspiring Philosophy did an excellent video on this showing that eyewitness testimony can be highly reliable for years on end. So I just encourage everyone to look at personal event memories. That's the type of memory that is displayed in the Gospels. Not flashbulb, not other types of memories. This is kind of hard to see. Let me zoom in a little bit. So being asked to note take as indicative of things like the Q source and the synoptic problem, short sayings, parables, uh, so on and so forth. And so, like, here's some of the
Okay, right.
gospel.
You've waffled. You've gone through 2, 3 slides now. Let's go back before you continue to waffle. You're having some
Sure.
kind of aneurysm here. It's weird. Right. Back because you went through a bunch of slides. All right. Modern studies of eyewitness. This is fucking ridiculous.
You're
I
fucking
just met.
ridiculous.
I know I'm fucking ridiculous. That's why people love me. But at
Aren't you
least I'm
guys
not a
just a
moron.
bucket of chuckles? All right, let's
You notice how I didn't call you fucking ridiculous, but you had to
try
resort to that.
try to
Yeah,
focus
typical.
here.
There's no love like there's no hate like
Can you mute
Christian
him?
love.
Can you mute him?
Hold on. It is fair to
No,
give him
it's
a
my
chance to
turn.
respond, but
What
let's.
do you mean mute me?
I know,
You just
I know.
waffled for 10
Just be
minutes.
quiet.
boy.
Just hurry up. Get to your point.
I want to
What's
ask
your
politely,
point?
Craig, if
You
you
don't tell
can
me what to do.
hold on.
Calm down.
Craig, both of you, hold on. I'm going to unmute you, Craig, but please try to engage with the subject. I know you're trying to ruffle some feathers here, but it's not being well received. So if you could just engage with the
was
argument
doing
for the
fine.
sake of the audience.
You do notice he interrupted me though and started that. Just so everyone's aware. The good Christian boy is the one that
All right, you're not engaging still. Let's go get
I'm
into what
going
you put
to.
up.
I'm just going. I'm getting my notes up. So give me a sec. Right. So his slide here says the gist is usually recalled as opposed to minor granular details. Translation for that: eyewitnesses only remember vague summaries, not specifics. So in a court, how are we trusting vague memories to prove a man walked on water and came back from the dead? Ridiculous. Studies fail to reproduce scenarios with personal event memories. So translation for that is people's memories of big personal events are not reliably reproducible. He is literally saying that we can't reproduce how people remember their own weddings. But we're supposed to trust anonymous memories about ancient zombie Jesus. Wonderful. He says flashbulb and episodic memories tend to be reconstructive. Translation for that is that means people unconsciously edit and rebuild their memories over time, especially dramatic ones. So he's describing how cults are born, not how history is verified. And finally, it says their false memories reconstruct details from accurate memories, which is exactly how we get resurrection legends, miracle stories, and contradictions between gospels. His slide doesn't prove the Bible's true. It explains how people can sincerely believe and misremember absolute nonsense. I only paid attention to the first slide and then ignored the rest of the waffle. So, because that's all he's doing is waffling. Right. I've asked several times to present to me an eyewitness that wrote something in the Bible. That doesn't exist. He's just implied that someone did. And that wasn't true. So he has no eyewitnesses, just to be clear.
Right. Okay, so like first of all, I'm really interested in this weird criterion that the eyewitness has to like write their own testimony in the Bible.
Oh yeah, that's how it works. That's how.
You're on mute. Sorry, Craig. We want to try to keep this running a little smoother.
I'm interested in why is that the criteria? Like, why can't we have reliable second-hand eyewitness testimony?
All right.
Okay, you can unmute him.
I was gonna say if you're gonna ask questions, yeah, there you go. All right.
Yeah. So that and I'm gonna be like a lawyer here is literally called hearsay. It would be dismissed in court. Well, I know someone who said this. Well, we don't care. That's hearsay. No, we don't trust somebody that heard something from somebody else to then tell that story correctly. As children at school, we sat in a circle and tested that with games of Chinese whisper. And it was always very different from one child to the next, from one person to the next. Stories are not recounted exactly the same, unless somebody that actually was there wrote his own experiences and they're in the Bible. You do not have an eyewitness, you only have hearsay.
Okay, let's address this like stupid hearsay objection. I keep on hearing it in these types of discussions, but hearsay versus secondhand testimony. Courts make a distinction between secondhand testimony and hearsay. Although the two concepts are closely related, the distinction primarily lies in how they are used and defined within legal proceedings. So hearsay, strictly speaking, is just like an out-of-court statement. Secondhand testimony can be things like expert witness testimony, and things like that.
Right. Okay. Go back. Hold on. Don't switch. I don't want you switching slides, because you're good at waffling. The
Cool.
differentiation underscores that courts are concerned primarily with reliability and fairness rather than epistemology distinctions. Well, you've just debunked yourself and ruined your own argument because
I don't even think you understand that.
I was in the middle
Hold
of
on.
words. Be quiet.
We're giving Craig a chance to
You've
respond
just
to the slide.
debunked yourself and disproven your own argument because we have already discussed how unreliable anything in the Bible is, as it contradicts itself from page to page. So you have literally described how this is hearsay, not just second-hand testimony. Thank you once again for disproving yourself. But as you're a Christian apologetic, you will twist it and see it the way that your evil mind would like to.
All right, let's let Apollos keep pushing through there. Like I said, we do have a Christian audience, who wants to hear these arguments. So I'll let you lay out the next slide. But I do think this is a fair format. If you present like a single slide, to let Craig do a response after a single slide has been presented. All right. We'll try to move through.
Yeah, well, I'm
I'm
trying to find the. Here it is. On Rule 804, declarant unavailable. When a declarant is unavailable, such as being deceased, aka the disciples, certain exceptions permit their statements to be admitted as testimony. Former testimony, dying declarations, declarations against interest. Like the idea that.
Right. Let me just quickly respond to that. Could you please point to me any court case that has allowed a hearsay exception when someone died decades earlier, because that's what we're saying the case here. So unless you've got a case of hearsay exception which applies to someone saying something happened decades later and that being applied to the situation, you do not have a case here.
All right,
dude, this is literally in the federal statutes for evidence.
Yeah, it's in the federal statutes, but
Rule
again,
804.
unless you can present me with a case where it is decades later, that does not apply.
All right, let's let him present the rest of the slide here as Apollos sees it.
I mean, everyone can see it. Do we really have to listen to him read it? It's on the screen.
Well, there's also his interpretation, but yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't know how fast.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on to miracles. So let's just say
all right, cool. Let's move on to miracles. Show me a video of a miracle happening, please.
All right, we're gonna let Apollos present. Obviously, he's got something that he wants to get into.
Well, yeah, honestly, I'm honestly just gonna
present. A bit of fairness here. Can I ask for a bit of fairness here? Apollo has been trying to lead this conversation, so I would like to lead this part of the conversation regarding miracles. So I rather than just going off of his slides and me answering silly little questions,
to be fair,
for him,
unless you're making...
I would like to actually be the one to run this part of the conversation, and put the burden of proof on him. And it's a very simple thing that I would like to request, and that is evidence, i.e. a video or a actual record of a miracle happening with proof that it is divine intervention that is causing that miracle. I don't want him to go through his slides. I just want to focus on that one thing, the evidence of it happening.
To be fair,
yeah, so...
I mean, yeah, as we established going into it, just to also be fair, when we have these discussions, he's making the positive assertion. You're not making the case for positive atheism, but he is making a positive case for Christianity. So I don't think there's anything unfair about it. He's presenting his arguments the way he sees them, and if you don't find them compelling, that's
but what I'm saying is I would like to be the one to actually ask for the evidence this time, and because I
think you have.
He has ran the conversation. Right. Let's be fair. He has completely ran the conversation. So before he gets to run this part of the conversation,
Craig, I asked a couple of questions.
It is up to Apollos to represent the Christian case of why those miracles.
Well, yeah, but it's also up to me to be able to ask questions and demand evidence from my side. And all I'm asking for is a bit of fairness. And if we're going to move on to miracles, then I would like to be the one that would be the one that run the conversation rather than it being Apollo this time.
Okay,
that's completely fair.
If you want to make
he has done that.
So if you want to make a case like a positive case of like miracles are impossible, then that's
well,
fine.
no, what I'm going to be doing is asking for evidence of miracles happening. So,
so the ball would still be in Apollo's court. So don't complain that the ball's in his court if you need him to provide the positive evidence. So
well, yeah, but I'm laying out the evidence that
we're doing too much meta. Okay, let's lay out the evidence.
No, I'm not doing any meta. I'm just asking for a bit of fairness, and I want to lay out the question.
What's the evidence?
I haven't finished what I'm saying.
Okay, then finish what you're saying. Hurry up and
can you be quiet and give me a second?
Just lay it out. I would like to without more discussion about the discussion. Let's just over to you, Craig.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm simply asking for some fairness and be able to ask my question.
Give us your parameters for the miracle, all right?
Right. So Evidence that I want, and it's very simple parameters. I don't want it going outside of this. I want evidence that a miracle has happened, i.e., a video of it happening, with proof that that is directly related to God doing it, that it is divine intervention. I don't want assumptions. I don't want definitions. I just want proof that God made a thing happen. Do you have that evidence available?
Well, I don't care what you want because this discussion is about what is true, and what is true is indicative of
Right.
what is
Okay. So to
evidentially
be clear, you
supported.
don't have that evidence.
Not the kind of evidence you're asking for. You don't even have
Right.
that
Okay.
kind of
So right.
evidence
Cool.
for
So
all
in that
sorts of
case, we're
things.
done with miracles. Wonderful. You don't have evidence of miracles.
right.
Miracles don't happen.
Because I don't have
Wonderful.
a video of it.
We gave
I
you
mean,
a chance to
I
ask
have a
the
Because you
question.
have no
photograph of it.
evidence
Hold
that
on,
it-
Craig. We give you a chance to ask the question, so I want to put it back in Apollo's court. We'll keep going in circles on this. This has already been answered a few times in the discussion. So, like I said, we do have a Christian audience here as well that do want to hear the arguments from Apollos, and expected that, like I say, you're going to find them.
Yeah. So
not
this idea
satisfactory. So
that
go ahead.
this
Lloyd.
idea that evidence has to be repeatable in my immediate perception in order to be admitted as evidence. This just like violates like standard philosophy of evidence textbooks. Like it is simply E is evidence that H, if and only P, given the hypothesis and the evidence is greater than just the hypothesis alone. Put simply, a data point is evidence if it raises the probability of a hypothesis being true. And so, like, I would point to the various polymodal experiences by the apostles and the eyewitness testimonies of the Gospels, um, in order to indicate that a miracle did happen. Um, so here's my question, right? What is your explanation behind the early Christianity phenomena?
Right.
You can unmute him.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
asked him.
Number one, the early Christianity phenomena. What is that? Define it.
The eyewitness reports of the apostles that they saw Jesus rose from the dead.
There's no eyewitness. We've gone through that. You don't have any eyewitness accounts.
So
we've gone
no,
through
no,
that. There is no eyewitness accounts.
I already contested that.
I don't care if you contested it. You don't have any eyewitness accounts.
What's your, how do you, you're making a
Because you
claim.
have no one that saw it happen. You only have people that told people that then possibly told someone else that then
You
wrote
don't
it in a
have- you
book
don't-
decades later. That would be thrown out in court and you would be laughed at. You have no eyewitness
This is
accounts.
not a court case,
I do
number
not
one.
accept
Oh my
you saying you
goodness.
have eyewitness accounts. You have none. We have gone through that. Do not say you have eyewitness accounts because you are lying if you do.
Hearsay.
All right. I'm
So
gonna let you
like this
present
idea
another
that it
slide.
has to be like court case like level like evidence.
Hold on, Craig. I
Um,
put you on the mute there just to let him have a chance here to.
Yeah, from a
present his stuff there.
philosophical perspective, however, hearsay can still be reliable under logical standards, even if it does not meet legal trial standards. The general inadmissibility of hearsay evidence in legal contexts often hinges on the principle that better evidence is typically available. The principle of innocent until proven guilty plays a key role by raising the epistemic standards required for establishing guilt, emphasizing that evidence must be highly reliable and subject to scrutiny such as cross-examination. So it is more about like democracy and giving people a fair chance to testify for themselves as opposed to like what actually happened. That's why we have things like hearsay in check. But we can always make like
okay.
probabilistic
Again,
assumptions.
I'm sorry, but you're just waffling and you're trying to. This is what Christian apologetics do. I'm going to twist things until I get the answer that I do. No, nobody would accept that there is eyewitness accounts. Nobody that was there at the
Simon
time of
Gathercole.
Jesus wrote anything that is in the Bible. Decades later, from a story from somebody else, does not count as reliable eyewitness testimony of any kind. You want it to be because you need it to be. But no logical, sane person would accept anything written in a book decades later by a different person as eyewitness testimony. I'm sorry, but that's a lie if you say it is. I don't care what you're reading, trying to twist it to the way that you want, that actually shows how desperate you are for it to be true. There is no eyewitness testimony. Stop lying to yourself. I know it's hard because you believe in magic, but just stop it.
And you want to talk to me about being patronizing.
Oh
Okay,
no, you
like,
deserve being patronized too, because let's face it.
okay,
you're a
then you
fucking idiot.
you deserve being patronized too.
Lovely
What-
Christian love there.
Cool, lovely atheist love there.
Oh, I don't claim to love everyone. I think that people like you are cunts. that
Cool.
will apologize for what you worship if what was real, if
All
it
right,
was
just
real,
mute him,
a
please.
purely
Yeah.
evil. No, no,
All
no,
right.
no! Don't just mute me. I'm
Not
sorry.
just mute you, but like you're not.
No,
Once again, if this is where we're gonna
I'm
go,
sorry.
we're
How about just mute
so
him?
off. It's just so off the ball now. Like you're just kind of
It's because he
parading
can't
a
cope
bit.
with it. He can't cope with the fact that he has no arguments, he has no eyewitness testimonies, and he has to keep twisting the words to say that he has. I'm sorry, but no sane person with an
Testimony of
IQ higher
Papias,
than their
one of the
shoe
disciples
size,
of John.
no IQ person with an IQ higher than their shoe size would say an eyewitness testimony is
Notice
something
how
that
he's
was
just
written
making a bunch of
decades
claims
later
without
by a
evidence.
different person. That is fucking stupid.
All right, Craig, you're on mute. I'm sorry. I think sometimes I wonder if Craig is just trying to see how far he can push before I snap. Anyways, go ahead there, Apollos.
Yeah, so like the testimony of Papias, I believe he was a disciple of John, writing around 95 to 110 provides some of the earliest evidence of gospel authorship. Mark being the memoirs of Peter, Matthew being attributed to Matthew, and so on and so forth. Forgery concerns in early Christianity, and none of this like proves like eyewitness testimony, but they're indicators that are highly likely under the supposition that they were written by eyewitnesses as opposed to anyone else. He still hasn't explained things like onomastic congruence. He still has not given me an explanation for the polymodal experiences besides denied the eyewitness testimony, and he never gave me evidence for why it's not eyewitness testimony. Um, and
Okay, right.
yeah.
You did more than one slide. We talked about this, but I know maybe there's an ADHD thing. I'm not sure. But again, you have no eyewitness testimony, and I have explained that. Please stop going in circles. And I'm just going to put a button on this. Decades later, written by somebody else.
What
That
makes you
is
think it's
not
decades later?
because it was.
What do you mean it was?
The stories were written decades later.
How many
Nothing was
decades
written
later?
at the
How many
time.
decades later? Do
At
you even
least
know?
two. Right.
Okay.
But again, let me be clear.
But even that is like within.
Let me be clear. Written decades later by somebody else is not eyewitnesses. And I don't want to go in circles with that. I deny that you have eyewitness because you do not. So stop saying you have eyewitnesses because I will keep interrupting you and saying, no, you do not.
Okay,
You
cool.
don't
And I'll
have
just keep going through
eyewitnesses.
my
You
slides and
have
say
no
that I have
evidence of it
eyewitnesses.
happened. No, you don't. You're a liar if you say that you do.
All right.
Cool.
It is, like I said, it is very much established that we understand that you're not going to believe the accounts of eyewitnesses like I said, that's just expected
So,
going
yeah,
in. But if
there
we
is
can't
no
just keep
eyewitnesses.
repeating the same thing. We understand that that's what you think. Apollos is going to get a chance to keep representing Christianity.
But
like
he
I
just
said.
keeps saying the same thing, though. He just keeps saying there's eyewitnesses, and that's his case. Eyewitnesses,
Well,
eyewitnesses.
He
has no eyewitnesses.
He's moving through different
Every time
and
he says
unique
eyewitnesses,
slides,
he loses the
and we're
argument.
gonna just keep going through them, Craig. Come on, help me out here, bud. All right, over to you, Apollos.
So onomastic congruence is the idea that the alignment of names used in the Gospel and Acts with the known naming patterns of the first century Palestine. This includes both the frequency and type of names, Simon, Mary, Judas, as well as their distribution and usage within a specific historical and geographical context. Why does this matter? Well, the names of the Gospels reflect patterns unique to first century Palestine, aligning with the cultural and social landscapes of Jesus' time and place. This ties the gospel accounts to the specific geography where the events occurred, temporal anchoring. So, like, yeah, I mean, Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era, so, like, there would have been no chance to, like, get the onomastics right after the fact. So, like, yeah, how do you explain the 85% onomastic congruence?
Craig,
Under the supposition that the Gospels were not eyewitnesses, were not written by eyewitnesses.
How do I define? How do I explain what?
Onomastic congruence.
What is that?
I just explained it to you.
Yeah, you waffled a bunch, so just explain it.
Yeah, I'll explain it again. I'll make it so
briefly. Just do it in 10 words or less.
The alignment of names used in the Gospels and Acts with the known naming patterns of first century Palestine.
And what about that?
Within so the Gospels get an 85% reliability of getting the names right.
So
of the people around that
B
time.
minus then.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, well, but
You
like
so you trust a B minus and 85%
it's
statistical
greater than
anomaly.
50%, man. It's greater
Yeah,
than 50%.
wonderful. I'm glad you can count, but 85%
I'm glad
based
you can
on some.
put a number
Am
on
I
like a
not allowed
grading
to
scale.
respond to? I just literally you waffled for about 25 minutes there.
Just
So
give
how
the
about you shut your
explanation
mouth
then.
and let me actually respond before you
Respond.
interrupt? I'm
Respond.
trying to, but you don't let me because you're a triggered little child.
Oh, well, okay, just respond.
Ooh.
All right, Craig, let's
Okay?
carry on.
Yeah. Do me a
Uh,
favor, mute him while I respond
to be
because I keep
fair,
getting
to be
muted, so
fair,
it's only fair.
to be fair,
So
acknowledging that
mute
somebody
him for
can
me.
account is pretty condescending. So I mean, we can't cry. We can't cry at this point. Go ahead, Craig, when you're ready.
Yeah, can he be muted though, so he can't interrupt me,
If
please?
he interrupts, he can be muted. He's presented his slides, so he knows where we're at
Yeah.
with our format here.
Yeah, his chat GPT generated slides are lovely. Again, a name. Yeah, the Bible was written at the time when these names existed. So it's likely that 85% of the names mentioned would be possibly accurate. But again, that's a B minus. It's not great. If I got 85 out of 100, I'd be really pissed off. That doesn't mean anything. It is you grasping at straws for wanting things to be true. And none of this is evidence of a miracle of any kind. You know, I asked for simple evidence of a miracle, and instead you showed me a statistical anomaly about names in Palestine. This is how desperate you are.
All right, that's how we know where Craig's getting to the end of his thought there. So I'll hand it back over to you, Apollos, to respond.
So like, yeah, this idea that like I can use naive enumerative induction to basically uh hold up, let me try and get to the right side.
Yeah, no worries.
Mm,
Yeah, take your time. It's a chance for
yeah,
everybody to
so
take a
like this
breath.
idea that like I can't attest to something because like it's not repeatable or observable is like quite ridiculous. I mean, like you
Science would
believe in
disagree.
okay, well no they wouldn't because like they believe in abiogenesis and that's not like repeatable. That has been repeated. Um and it's not something that has been like tested. Of course you can say things like, "Oh yeah, there are different lines of evidence that point to it that are observable," but that's exactly what I'm doing, so
All right.
you can unmute him.
Yeah, I usually click it, but he's sometimes distracted. It's all right. Go
Yeah.
ahead there, Craig.
Sorry, why was I muted there? We were having a conversation. Oh.
I was gonna say I thought we were doing one slide past the ball, but yeah, let's try to keep it smooth.
Well, I'd like to have a back and forth conversation, but he lets me get like 2 words in before interrupting.
Oh,
You're the one interrupting everyone.
you guys and your
Really,
debate
yeah, it's
analysis.
crazy.
Answer.
Yeah.
what he's just
Anyway,
presented,
so
please.
yeah, what's your point here? What you saying? Just
Why is your
be brief.
criterion for evidence that it has to be observable or testable?
Because
Not
that is
sorry, not
how.
testable, not testable. I mean like observable and repeatable.
Oh, because that's how the world is determined and how we figure out things about the world to be true. If they can't be tested and they can't be repeated, then there's no reason to believe they ever happened in the first place. That's how science works. Science works by being able to test something and repeat that test. If you can't
Okay, can you
repeat
show
it,
me the
then
test for abiogenesis?
if you can't repeat it, then you don't know that it happened. Nobody says that abiogenesis is the definite thing that happened. So you're representing how science works because no one says abiogenesis is 100% the answer to how life started. It's
Okay,
not
that's
something we
fair.
would
So
have a
you
test for or that we say is repeatable because we don't say that is definitely the answer.
All right, let's end the
You
screen
do know
share
that
for a
science
bit.
doesn't have all the answers, right?
We'll
And we
just
don't ever
go
claim
back to our main screen since we haven't been there for the majority of the debate. Let's
yeah, no worries.
let's just try to have a little back and forth for a bit about this stuff.
I know, guys. He asked me for the test for abiogenesis. Brilliant. Showing he doesn't understand anything about science or evidence in the slightest.
All right, with the performative stuff, let's hand it over to you there, Apollos.
Yeah, so like so are you saying that like abiogenesis is ruled out by science?
No, I'm saying we don't have the answers. I'm sorry, is your hearing not working? I made what I said very, very clear that nobody
Yeah, that
says
it
that
has
is
to be
definitive.
repeatable, that it has to be repeatable and it has to be
Yeah, if we are
observable.
claiming that that is what it is, and we have the evidence to suggest that that is the case.
So are you saying there's no evidence for abiogenesis?
No, I'm saying that we don't have all of the answers, and nobody claims
So,
that
but
is
I'm asking you. I'm
Nobody
asking you the
claims that
question.
nobody
Do we have
claims
evidence for?
nobody claims that that is definitively the answer.
Let's let him clarify
I never
his question.
said that. I never said it was definitively the answer. I'm just
Well, then
asking.
you don't understand what we're talking
Is there
about with
evidence for
science.
abiogenesis? Is there evidence for abiogenesis?
There is certain things that point towards it, but it is not something we would say is a definitive thing that we can test or anything. Very much like
Right.
dark matter, we see evidence
Right.
for certain
There you
things.
go. There you go.
And we
There's
see
your answer.
Am I not allowed to respond properly? Yeah.
Oh, no,
thing
respond.
I'm trying to, but I got a
Craig,
few
you're the one
words
that
in, and
asked
once
for
again,
the back and forth. You got to be able to back it up,
well,
come back
yeah,
in.
but I've got to be able to get the chance to actually
He
respond.
said, "There's
right?
your answer." He backed away.
But he didn't.
Carry
He
on.
didn't let me give my answer. That's the thing. He said, "There's your answer," when I hadn't finished talking.
Obviously,
which is what
he
people
felt
like this
satisfied
do.
at that point. It was a guy. He felt
Well,
like a guy that got
yeah,
you or
but
something.
how
Come
could
on,
he be
man.
satisfied?
Carry
because I
on,
hadn't
Craig.
finished what I was saying.
I'll put
I
you
haven't
on mute
finished
there,
what you're
Craig.
saying.
Let's carry it on. Come on.
Yeah. No, I now that he's done that, he doesn't get to hear the rest of the answer. If he's going to act like a child, so will I.
Oh man, this is you guys are like I
This
said,
is
just
juicy.
a bucket of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No,
welcome
I'll
to
do it. All right.
right.
I'll make the point that I'm making.
Oh, great.
Science
Make it,
doesn't
please.
say. Yeah, science
Make it
doesn't
now.
say that this is definitely this or this is definitely that. Abiogenesis isn't something that we say this is 100%. We think this is what's happened, and we've got all this evidence to suggest and things that we can test and recreate. We don't know the genesis of how life started, just like we don't know how the universe started, and we never make a claim to know how the universe started. We can make observations. I'll let you know when I'm done. We can make observations about things, and we can make predictions based on those observations. But things like the beginning of life or the beginning of the universe, we don't know, and it's not within what science would say to know because we can't see before that happened. So it's not something we could ever test or reproduce.
So I'll ask the question again. Is there evidence for abiogenesis?
I answered that question very, very clearly. In fact, I used the words.
No, you just said that.
I actually specifically said the words about the evidence. If you didn't hear them, maybe that's your problem.
Okay, cool. No, I said that. I said, is there evidence for abiogenesis? Didn't get a yes.
And I
didn't get a
answered that
no.
question very specifically.
What is it? Yes or no?
Well, I've already answered it. Asked and answered.
Yes or no? Answer it again.
Asked and answered.
Answer it again.
I don't want to.
Cool. All right.
If you can't listen to the answers,
so for those of
then
you
it's
who are
kind of your
wondering what's
problem.
happening, if
If
he says no,
you can't listen to the answers I give,
hold on. You both had a lot of chances. I'm gonna let Apollos try to push us into some
yeah.
new
So
territory.
if he says no, for those of you who don't get the dilemma yet, if he says no, he is admitting that there is no evidence for something like abiogenesis, which would imply that a mind was behind it, which would imply something like God was behind it. If he says yes, then he's implying that something like something that there can be things that are admitted as evidence that are not necessarily repeatable or observable.
Well, let's see what Craig thinks of that analysis. Over to you, Craig.
Yeah, just a bunch of assumptions there. If it's not this, then it has to be this. Lovely assumption.
That.
I'm sorry. You did. You said if we don't have evidence for it, therefore it has to be designed by a mind. That's what you said, right?
No, I said it wouldn't highly likely imply it.
Why? That's an assumption.
Wait, what?
Why would it imply
No.
it? You think it would imply it. That is an assumption.
I do.
Well, it's just an assumption.
What do you mean it's an assumption?
It's literally an assumption. I assume that it implies that. But that's your implication. That's your assumption. It doesn't make that implication. You are the one making that implication.
So I'm gonna. Oh my goodness. So like, I'm not sure.
Do you disagree that you're the one making that implication?
Hold on, before you.
I didn't even get a response to like my whole like dilemma thing.
Let's go ahead.
All you said was that.
Oh yeah, your dilemma was a straw man, and I explained why it's a straw man.
All right, let's let Apollos outline it for the Christians in the audience, right?
So like, or we can just switch it to like, there's design in the universe.
A lovely assumption once again.
Or there's no design in the universe.
no need for a designer. Physics works absolutely fine without a god.
I'm exhausted,
If
guys,
you say
with
it
this
needs a
guy.
god, then you're going to actually need to prove that assumption that a god is required to set the physics of the universe in motion.
Did the people who observed the solar neutrinos have to prove their new model of physics with regards to the sun in order to line it up with the current
That's
evidence?
nothing to do with God.
Yeah, it does, because it shows
No,
that even science uses posterior evidence.
no, they would then test that and
They did
present a
test
new.
it.
Yeah, but you can't test
They
for God. That's the difference.
no, we can
You can't
no,
ever test for God.
I can't put God into a beaker, but
Well,
I can
therefore,
show
there is
signs and
you can't
indications.
prove. No, you can't. You
So
can make assumptions. There is.
All right.
he also got to this idea that this is a relatively new argument I've developed. So hopefully I can present it just
Cool.
Wait,
fine.
I asked the question
Um,
though. You didn't answer. Do you have anything other than just your implications and your assumptions that a
they're not.
creator is required?
What do you mean my assumptions? I mean my assumptions are also the assumptions of many other Christian apologists and scientists and
Yeah, but not
historians. And
everyone. So you are the one that I'm talking to. So it is
yeah,
your assumption and your implication.
what do you mean by
And again,
assumption?
I do want to point out that Christians are the minority in the planet. So it is the assumption of the
So are
minority.
atheists? God.
Uh,
Um,
no, Christians are the minority. In fact, here's the thing: you're pretty much as atheist as I am. Of all of the gods in the world, you believe in just one more than me. There's thousands of gods, and we believe in about the same amount, right? You just believe in one more god than me. You're pretty much as atheist as I am.
can you
Let's be clear.
that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
So I'm just gonna go on and address this earlier argument he made that can I share my screen real quick?
Sure. New argument. That sounds fun. We'll give you the space to.
oh, cool. So my argument just no, never mind. Right, cool.
Well, like I say.
No, it actually doesn't make any sense. But anyway,
Oh, to
I'm gonna
you
share my
because you think magic is real. Yeah.
Well, like I say, we'll leave that up to the audience to decide whether they feel that that's been interacted with properly. But we're going
But
to.
I mean, I would really like him to explain why he has the assumption that physics requires a creator.
I never said that, but anyway,
Well, you did. You
so,
said that the
dude,
universe was created, right?
Can you mute him,
We
please?
are- Oh, yeah, I was
No, no, you don't keep saying mute me when I'm trying to have a
I was gonna say,
conversation.
I'm trying to.
I will be honest.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to.
I was just about to put you on a mute, but when anytime I'm about to put somebody on mute, and then somebody asks me to put them on mute, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it just because
So,
you
I mean,
asked me
I-
now. But
I'm
anyway,
actually
I
just
do have
trying
to put you on mute. I'm so sorry, Craig. We can't just keep hammering away at the same.
Yeah,
thing.
so-
If it's like I say, you've already said you don't find it compelling. You've said here's why I don't find it compelling. Here's why he disagrees. We've got something we can move into that maybe won't be spiraling on this one issue there. So let's carry
Yeah.
on.
So this is the idea that. So this heavily relies on the science of recursive perspective social inferences, and that's basically the idea that the more orders of thinking, first order thinking like reverse psychology, second order thinking, third order thinking, like I want him to think that God exists, the Christian God exists, but in fact I'm really the Zeus God. It's actually ad hoc. Um, so, like, because it requires maintaining a mental model of another person's beliefs, intentions, and reasoning strategies. Um, and so, like, you can see this in like social neuroscience, developmental psychology, and strategic interaction studies. That recursive perspective social inferences, which lying is a type of recursive perspective social inference, is more ad hoc than just truth telling. So if it is the case that Christ was risen from the dead, then we are in good grounds to believe that a Christian God raised him from the dead, as opposed to other gods. So like yeah, here are some like uh other pointers that lying is best modeled as a type of recursive perspective social
Yeah, dude,
inference.
you are literally just
Um,
waffling. None of this is evidence of Christianity being true. It's just
yeah,
you
it does,
going,
because
well,
it
I
means
think a bunch of these things are true, therefore. Give me evidence that anything in the Bible actually happened, and that Jesus was the Son of God and that God is real. No more of this just trying to show a bunch of slides with words that you think are clever and make a point. They don't. If Christianity is
what do you
true,
not understand about
if
it?
Christianity is, it's not, I don't understand it. It's just irrelevant to the conversation. You're trying to avoid the
It's
topic of
relevant.
is Christianity true? If Christianity is true, there would be
I'm
some
avoiding the
evidence of
topic.
it. Show me evidence of a miracle. Show me evidence of God. Show me evidence that a creator exists. Stop waffling and actually engage in the conversation.
You're the one who keeps interrupting people, but
No,
you
when
just
you
you just did.
waffle,
You just did.
when
You
you
just did.
waffle, I have to interrupt. None of this matters. None of this would
So
disprove or prove
I
Christianity.
already showed that, like, in standard scientific studies, like the
You
solar
don't
neutrino
understand science.
Hold
problem,
on,
We've
let's let
shown
him.
that.
Let's let
there
Apollos
can
have
be
a chance here.
very well models that they propose that are not in
And
their
again,
current
right, hold on.
understanding,
No,
and
no,
they
no.
update it with
You're
current
going around.
One second,
observations.
you can do all of the addressing in just 1 second. Let him speak for just please. Go ahead, Apollos.
Yeah. So if God, basically, I was just trying to describe, like, if there's an agent that raised Christ from the dead, then it's likely the Christian God raised him from the dead, as opposed to like Thor or Zeus or like aliens, because of lying and reverse psychology being a type of recursive perspective social inference. Recursive perspective social inferences are ad hoc because they are ad hoc in trying to map out someone's intentions, as opposed to like straightforward truth telling. The same way I would look at an empty plate and a dog walking away from it, I would conclude that he ate the plate. I'm sorry, that he ate the food, as opposed to trying to get you into thinking that he ate the food when he really didn't.
All right, maybe we can try to
Something
hone
ridiculous
in
is
on
that.
that. Maybe that might.
Good Lord, you waffle a bunch of nonsense, man. At least change the tone of your voice, please. Right, scientific models are based on evidence. When physicists propose a new model of neutrino behavior, they base it on existing observations, make
Yep.
testable predictions, and run experiments to verify or testify it. In science, we say, we don't know, but we're working on it. In religion, they say, God did it. Then they stop asking questions. You're trying to compare finding a new model of neutrinos to somehow that explaining how a God did it. It's just so far away from understanding how science works that it's incredible. You are literally giving a straw man of the scientific method and how science works and arguing
So
against it. You do understand that, right?
so what's not analogous about those two comparisons?
I just explained it.
You just said that it was not
God is
analogous.
not God is not a hypothesis, is it?
Why?
It's an explanation. It's not a hypothesis.
What's the difference between an explanation and a hypothesis, and why would we favor one over the other?
Well, a hypothesis is something that you would base on observations. It's the second part of the scientific method. Part one, make an observation and, based on observation and known physics and the universe around us, then form a hypothesis that is a testable thing. Hypotheses have to be testable, right? You can't have a hypothesis that doesn't form a prediction that is testable. And God did it is not something that we can then make a prediction from and test. Therefore, God did it is outside the purviews of saying it's a hypothesis. It is literally the opposite of how science works. It's so far away from being a hypothesis and being testable and being something that is predictable that the fact that you think it is really makes me worry about your mental health.
So we got a hypothesis has observations attached to it. Is that correct
No,
or not?
words, dude, listen. Hypothesis has to have something that is then you can make predictions from and then test those predictions. God did it is not something you can make a testable prediction from.
No, but I can test for like eyewitness testimonies being
No,
behind the
that's not how
Gospels.
that works. Eyewitness testimony is not evidence, is not testable, is not predictable. If we're going to talk about hypothesis, which is a scientific term, then a hypothesis has to form a prediction, which is then testable with experimentation. Otherwise, it's not a hypothesis.
Oh my goodness.
The fact that you think that God is a hypothesis is basically the end of this debate. It shows that you don't understand anything about how science works and how to disprove science and how to disprove
I was
things
never
in
trying to
science.
disprove science.
Oh, how to disprove things in science. Sorry, I misspoke there. How it shows you know nothing how to. It shows you know nothing about how to disprove things in science or in a conversation like this. You are trying to compare God to science and saying God did it can be a hypothesis when it is the exact opposite of what a hypothesis is.
So you said that there would be some testable observations that are predictable, repeatable, and stuff like that. So why wouldn't the
But
historical
maybe if you
method?
listen to the words in order, step one of the scientific method is you see something, right? You make an observation and you ask a question
I see
about
data
that,
points in the Bible. Okay, continue.
okay? And you ask a question about that, right? And then from that, you would form a hypothesis. Now, a hypothesis is a very specific thing. A hypothesis is an educated guess based on known phenomenon in the world that is able to form a prediction that is testable.
Yeah,
Let's be
so
very
like
100% clear.
I can
God
test
did
whether or
it. Hold
not there
on.
were.
Let me finish my point. I'm bringing it home, right?
Okay.
There is no prediction and test that can be formed from the phrase God did it.
Not eyewitness testimony, not an empty tomb, not.
That's not a prediction, no. Prediction is about things that are going to happen in the
So
future.
if God rose Jesus from the dead, we would predict an empty tomb. We would predict historical
You're talking about
corroboration of
things in
that
the
empty tomb.
past. We need to be able to make
Yeah.
predictions from in the future. If your
So
hypothesis is God did it, right? We
yeah.
don't then talk about things that happened in the past. We then need to make a prediction about something that is going to happen in the future. You can't make a prediction
You
about
can't
the past.
use. You can't
You
use.
can't make a prediction about the past. That's called remembering, not making predictions. Okay.
So what do you
A
think of
prediction
geology?
is something that happens in the future. So please tell me what prediction you can make that is something that is going to happen in the future that we can test from the hypothesis God did it.
I reject this characterization of science because
Well,
there are things
I'm
like
sorry,
geology.
but
There are things like
I'm
geologists.
sorry, but
I'm
you don't
trying
get
to
to reject that
explain.
characterization of science.
There's
I am a man of
geology.
science. You don't get to reject it.
Whether he's right or not, let's let him explain why he.
There are things
is saying
like
the things he's saying.
geology that try to retroject physical laws back into the past to describe what a prebiotic
They don't
Earth
use
would
that
look
to make
like.
predictions. I'm sorry, you're incorrect.
No, they used laws that would make predictions and retrojected back into the past. That's how it works.
No.
Yes.
No, they don't. No, they don't do that. Again, predictions are about things that can happen in the future. Even in geology, they make predictions about things in the future.
So are you saying science can't say
the scientific
anything about
method
the
that we
past?
learn in high school is very
Oh,
clear,
brother.
right? And if you're going to use the word hypothesis, then you have to actually use it correctly. Hypothesis means you make a prediction, which is something that happens in the future, not the past. And then you have to be able to test that prediction.
So let me get this straight. Because the resurrection is in the past, therefore it's not a hypothesis. Therefore,
correct, because that's not something you can make a prediction about or test, is it?
Oh, brother.
It's
So
a
we can't say
story.
anything about the past. We can't say anything about the past.
No, you can't say anything about the past when you're trying to test something in science. No, unless it's something that can be repeated in a predictable pattern that you can test. But I don't know of any
So
other
it has to be
times
in
that
the
people have
future
been
in
put in a
order to be
cave
true.
and resurrected that we can predict is going to happen and then make a test about it. Right.
I think
I
we're
don't
also.
want. I don't
I
want
think
us to
we're
sound
also on time,
patronizing.
by the
But I
way.
don't want us to sound patronizing. But if we're talking about the
Um,
scientific method, do you know the 5 steps of the scientific method that you learn in high school?
I don't know it off the top of my head. No.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the problem, is it? You're trying to talk about, oh, this is how we do science, but you don't understand science.
You don't understand science.
Oh,
You don't
well, my 2
understand that
degrees would
geology
very
is a
much
thing.
disagree with you. My
You don't
degree in
understand that
physics,
geology
my degree
is
in
a thing.
physics, first with honors, and my degree in nuclear engineering, energy systems, and
First
fission
in
technology,
honors.
also first with honors, right? So that I do understand science. Also, my 7
I was
years
in
in
the
the
honors
Royal Navy
college.
as a nuclear engineer show that I understand science. Also, my 4 years as a project developer for Windtrag Energy Systems, developing the infrastructure in Scotland for wind energy, shows that I understand science.
So, he said that just because we haven't seen it before, because it has to be in the future or something
Yes,
stupid
because you
like
can't
that.
predict something in the past.
So
That's not how prediction works.
All right, let's let him present the
it's
slide
called
here.
abduction, buddy.
No, prediction. We're not doing abduction. We're
Abduction.
doing predict. Which part of the scientific method is that in?
Why do I have to? Why does it have to be specifically the scientific method? Why can't I use
Because you
historical
brought up the
method?
word hypothesis, which is a scientific
No, you're the
term,
one who
and
brought
if
up
we're
the
using
word
the scientific
hypothesis.
term, we are. You did. You're the one that brought up the word hypothesis. You said that God is the hypothesis.
No, I said why
Yes, you did. You very
is
specifically said
dude,
that.
calm down. Calm down. I said
don't lie to my face. You very specifically said that
okay,
God was the hypothesis.
yeah, but what I meant by that was God was the explanation, not like the
But
scientific
you
type
didn't
of
say that. You
hypothesis.
said hypothesis.
Okay, now I'm clarifying.
Right. So the entire argument that we've just had about hypothesis and science, now that I've proven you wrong, you're changing what you've said.
So science can't say anything about the past. That's incredibly ridiculous.
I'm not saying that, but there's methods of doing that. But what
How?
you are doing
How?
is misinterpreting science and the way that we do predictions. You can't make a prediction about something in the past that happened.
I can
Right?
make a prediction about something in the past that happened by using laws and signs of evidence that are consistent with our everyday experience and retrojected it back into the past.
Yeah, but then you have to be able to make a prediction and test
Yeah,
that
dude,
prediction.
if
And
you see
when have you been
if you
able
see
to
a puddle
test the
outside, if
when
you see
have
a
you been
puddle
able to
outside,
when have you been able to test the prediction of Jesus rose from the dead?
I already showed you the tests of the eyewitness testimony
Well,
and
no, no,
ran
no.
it
So
through
that's
some.
one time. One time isn't then repeating and
We'll
predicting and
run it by
testing.
other historians. Big
No,
deal.
no, but still just one time it's happened.
That doesn't make any sense.
Sorry, you can't test something that has only happened one time.
You can test the same thing multiple times. What are you saying?
Only if it's happening multiple times. To test if it happens, it has to happen again. We have to make a prediction, and then it happens, and then we test that prediction.
Ryan, I just want to go into
Having
super
one
chats.
thing
This dude
happen
has nothing
isn't
substantive
testing.
to the conversation, so
We can definitely get moved into the super chats.
What
But,
did he just say? Sorry. What did he just say?
Well,
we have not. You have nothing substantive to add to the conversation.
Oh,
So
yep.
let's
So you're
just.
running away from the conversation because I backed you into a corner
No, no,
several
no. It's
times.
genuinely. It's over 1 hour, dude. You haven't
Yeah,
backed me.
in 1 hour, I have beaten you into the ground and shown how stupid you are. So much so that you are running away from the
buddy.
conversation.
Cool, buddy. You don't even understand how science works. You don't understand that
Says the
geology is
guy
an
that thinks
actual.
God is a fucking hypothesis.
all right, you knew that was going to get under.
I said it was an explanation.
You
all right,
said
hold on.
hypothesis, you lying shit.
Hold on. All
Okay,
right,
now
so-
I'm changing. Now I'm changing my supposition. Now God is an
No,
explanation.
no, you can't.
A
We're going with
reasonable
what you said. You don't
explanation.
get to change your mind because I destroyed you.
Yeah, I
That's
do.
dishonest.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. What are you talking about?
Just wave that white flag and run away,
all right,
boy.
to be fair, if somebody decides to change their opinion because
Oh
they
my God.
realize something in a debate, that's actually more of an
It's,
honesty
yeah, I know,
thing
Ryan.
than I know. I was gonna say now I'm calling you out because changing your mind about something is a sign of honesty, not a sign of.
Oh no, no.
deception.
He's not saying he made a mistake. He's just changing.
Oh
what
dang,
he
we
said.
have more people who said Christianity is true in the poll. So
All right.
Well, that's because it's a Christian audience. Yes, I'm
Well-
aware of that.
well,
Just like
let's-
when I went to DebateCon and debated live in front of a Christian audience. Yes, that's what would happen.
All right, let's move
when a
on to the
Christian
super
audience
chats.
votes.
All right. Before we go into chats, I do.
Ryan, he
want
thinks
I
he's
want to
running
have
the
enough
chat.
energy
There
to.
it is.
I genuinely want to have enough energy to
All right, so
respond to questions by the audience.
Well, before
And this
we-
guy's just zapping all of it.
Well, just
because
before we
he's
go
just
into
spitting
that,
out a
just
bunch of
I'm
nonsense.
glad I
one
sapped your
second
energy,
here.
is
Hold on,
what I
hold
do.
on, hold on, both of you. If you don't mind, you've had this slide up for quite some time. If you want, just right quick, if you guys can take a few minutes, maybe talk about it. No, you took the slide off. Oh, okay, we can always do that. I was curious. I was like, I don't know. Maybe we have something there. All right, let's let us move into the Q&A. It's been an hour and a half, and yeah, these guys have been they've been at it, fellas. Yeah, you guys aren't shy, that's for sure. Let's see what the audience has to say here. I'm gonna start out with a super chat that was missed from last time. I'll remind the audience to smash the like button if they're having fun, if they're hanging out, if they're hanging in. We appreciate you. All right, so I see you're talking. Maybe you're not talking to me there, Craig. You're probably talking to your audience. That's cool. So membership chat, even Lord says, I have developed a question, Ryan. Craig, what is the point of being bad faith and being insulting to your opponent? Oh, you're in trouble now, Craig. Y'all's going to have to wait because my mouse just died. Ha! I can't even take you off mute. Isn't that fun? All right, you guys just chill out for 2 seconds. I'll be right back, and I'm going to clip this out in the post. right, joy is times to me. All right, ask to unmute as you're showing off your arm. Oh, correct. All right.
Yes,
So
yes. Hello.
I have developed a question for Craig. Craig, what is the point of being bad faith and insulting to your opponent? It shows the bigotry of an arrogant person.
Well, I wouldn't know about being bad faith because I never am. In fact, I'm the very opposite of bad faith. I like to hammer home points that are brought up instead of running away and trying to distort the other person's perspective and opinion. I am the exact opposite of bad faith, and I fight against bad faith. However, the insults are just fun, and I'm pretty sure that person doesn't know what a bigot is.
All right, we're gonna get into the super chats things. I've got you covered there, even Lord on the missed one there. So I'll let James know so you don't try to pull any funny business. Oh, good for you. All right, thanks everybody for your super chats.
Dude, this cookies is insane, by the way.
I see your stream over there. I'm a Canadian, so I mean, whatever. Do what you want. You know how I am. So plant-based says, when was the earliest account of Jesus's resurrection? Over to you, Apollos.
Yeah, so that many scholars regard the First Corinthians 15 creed being the earliest eyewitness account that is passed down to Paul. Many scholars believe that it was codified within even can be as early as prior to Paul's conversion because it was passed down to him. And it lists down the many different witnesses to Christ's resurrection, including the appearance of the 500. Um, so that was the earliest account.
Let's carry on, I guess. No thoughts over there on the other side?
Well, if you want me to respond, I will. I'll just say there was no eyewitness accounts. We've gone through that.
All right, fair enough. FBI, a most wanted grape dangler, says, Squidward is too irate. Calm down, handsome.
Hey, you know what, right? As a teenager, when I watched SpongeBob, I was like, yeah, man, Squidward's he's really grumpy and stuff. But as I've grown up, I totally get fucking Squidward. All right.
Are you
I
saying that you
understand
inherently
Squidward.
knew that this comment was directed towards you? I think that says a lot.
Well, yeah, I've been called Squidward a few times, but Squidward doesn't have guns like this.
Oh,
So.
yeah. Yeah, we've all seen handsome Squidward. Yeah, JSS Tiger says in Genesis 2:17, God wants Eve. I'm sorry, you're the other Squidward, correct? Anyway, all right. JSS Tiger says in Genesis 2:17, God wants Eve to remain brainwashed by warning her not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I do believe in a historical Adam and Eve, although I'm not a young Earth creationist. As far as like her allowing to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, sensory knowledge of good and evil, I would appeal to the free will defense, as to why there's evil, specifically evil that we choose in the world. There are various other theodicies for undesired suffering, like Christian virtue ethics, the afterlife, the defeat condition, as advanced by several philosophers when it comes to the problem of animal suffering. But yeah, in a nutshell, like God wanted us to make that free choice. So yeah, here we are.
All right.
So
Any
you
thoughts
said
over
you
there?
believe in the biblical Adam and Eve. What is that specifically?
I just think that there is a first human couple. That's all.
But genetics says no. Otherwise, we'd all
No,
have
no, no, no.
like ancestors.
Genetics says that there's a variation of. I'm not saying that like they're the only progenitors of the entire human race, but what I am saying is that there is a first human couple.
Wait, so there was humans before that, but just not couples.
No, no, there were humans after Adam and Eve, that were not necessarily within their direct lineage, but that contributed to the.
How if Adam and Eve are the first human couple, how would there be any outside of their lineage?
So like, Genesis talks about how Cain and Abel took wives, or at least, sorry, the one of them that did survive. Um, so those wives came from somewhere. So
Right. So God created a bunch of different humans as well as Adam and Eve.
yeah.
So how do you know that Adam and Eve were the first couple? What if there was a couple before them in one of the other bunches? Are you just making the assumption of that?
Yeah, so like I'd point to man, I'm forgetting the title of the book, but uh I'm forgetting if it's like John Walton or like some random Old Testament scholar that talks about Genesis 1 through 11. Um and yeah, sorry, what is the question again? From Steve. Uh that's
Oh,
your name, right?
no,
Steve?
no, I'm Ryan. It's all good.
Ryan, never mind.
I'd
Sorry,
make a
Ryan.
fine Steve, I'm sure. No worries.
I think a Dwight suits you for some reason.
Get out of here. All right.
Sorry, Dwight.
You can't fire back right
I'm
now.
changing your name to Dwight on our chat, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. You do that. You have all the fun you want. You can change my name to Three Twisted Arse Hairs for all I care. All right. JSS Tiger says, "What are your thoughts on Exodus 32? Moses summons to the Levites to kill the idolaters, their wives, their children, etc., resulting in 3,000 deaths."
Wait, he summoned the Levi's, like the jeans.
No,
The Levites.
the Levites.
I know.
Silly man. All right, over to Apollos. So, what are your thoughts on Exodus 32? Moses summons the Levites to kill the idolaters, their wives, children, etc., resulting in 3,000 deaths, approximately, in this passage. They're saying.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen real quick for this. Regarding Old Testament ethics, basically the idea is that so the imperfect Mosaic law, like the law that was given to Moses, was not a morally perfect law that was meant to be forever. It was a culturally stipulated descriptive wisdom literature. So like um, there's been a great series by Inspiring Philosophy and John Walton's book, The World of the Lost Torah Law as Covenant and Wisdom in Ancient Context. It describes the Torah as a suzerain treaty, um, which means that originally it wasn't like a law like given by God, but more of like didactic wisdom literature to talk about the way that a king would handle like a nation and things like that. Um, and yeah, so like Jesus talks about how like that law was given because Israel's hearts were hardened, and yeah, like it was never supposed to be like a law forever for all time.
Okay. So, that would be your thoughts on the Exodus 32 there. Did you have anything to respond with there, Craig, to keep the conversation going, or do you want to carry on?
I just read the first issue of Sonic Cross DC. That was pretty good.
All right, you would. All right, let's hear it. Batman Inc. says Bernadette Moria. Sorry if I butchered that. Is the 70th confirmed miracle healing from Cauda Equina irreversible, and her case was deemed medically unexplained by 300 doctors. 72 confirmed healings. Lords Francis alone. All cases are public.
I think
And
that's for you,
none of
Craig.
them have any proof that God did it. Medical anomalies happen. And when you actually I've looked into several of these cases, and there's a lot more behind them than just, oh, they were healed after a miracle or something. Yeah, there is any time that someone says, well, they were healed and medicine couldn't explain it. Okay, we might not be able to explain it, but that doesn't mean that God did it. That is just an assumption. So it doesn't matter if medicine wasn't currently able to explain what happened, but to then say that the only logical assumption after that is, well, we don't know how medicine did it, so therefore God did it, is a little bit childish.
All right, any thoughts on
Yeah, and
that?
I'll just briefly respond to that.
Sure thing.
As far as like God being the specific agent behind something unexplainable, I would recommend my video on the logical entailment of the resurrection. That goes behind a little bit. I didn't explain it as well in this debate, but it goes behind like the recursive perspective social inference process and how that's like more ad hoc than like simply truth telling. And how, especially if it is the case in those miracles that whoever the super chatter was, um sent if it was the case that those miracles included like a high context, namely a prophetic prayer saying that you will be healed in Jesus' name or something like that, then I would be inclined to think that was genuinely a miracle. So hopefully that helps.
All right. We got lots more questions coming in. We're going to roll through them. I do want to just point out we have a couple questions that are coming in a little later. that I would say don't really fall in the vein of questions that we would ask on modern day debate. So
Hey, if there's any that are insulting to me, I demand that you read them.
comments on personal appearances towards Craig will be taken, but towards any other speakers, yeah, I'm not going to read those out. So I'm going
In
to
fact,
ask
I
this.
demand insults.
I'm going to ask this super chatter to. I'll still read a question, but if you could give me something that works in our live chat, I will read the question. But I'm not going to read these commentaries on anybody's.
Miracles.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. No super chats on people's appearances, please and thank you. Andrea's Eld says the Book of Mormon also has eyewitnesses. Then why is Apollos Christian and not Mormon?
Yeah, I'll share my screen for this real quick again. Something similar was brought up in my last debate against Planet Peterson. The idea that Mormonism has similar evidence to Christianity. But Mormonism is false because, well, they didn't even claim to see the plates like as because of like physical sight, and like 8 of the witnesses reportedly only handling and seeing the golden plates without mentioning a visitation from the angel Moroni. So what that translates to is they only handled a bunch of rocks that were covered under like some sheet of cloth. Many of them were excommunicated from the church. I'll just go through these slides really briefly. Um, Martin Harris reportedly admitted seeing the place in a visionary or spiritual sense rather than physically. Uh, they stated that they saw the plates by the power of God in the presence of an angel. Um, the golden plates were reportedly taken back by the angel Moroni, leaving no physical evidence of their existence. So, like, oh yeah, and by the way, the original witnesses to the to Mormonism weren't martyred for their faith, as opposed to like Peter, Paul, James, the brother of Jesus, and James, the son of Zebedee. Um, and various other unnamed Christian apostles. So the evidence just, quite frankly, isn't comparable. And there are other considerations regarding the reliability of their character. So yeah, there's that.
All right. Oh, Craig put himself on mute, so I'm just going to ask him to come off mute if he wants to comment on any of that, and if not, we can carry on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was getting up a list of eyewitness accounts of Thor that fall under the the criteria that our friend here has given. And in fact, from what I can see, that this list actually has much more the eyewitness accounts of Thor than there ever is of Jesus or anything. So, weird.
All right. Still looking in the live chat there, about a Basil problem. If you want to ask a question, like I said, the questions that you put forward, they're not appropriate to. These people are here. These people are here of their own time, and we appreciate them. So we're not gonna read those questions. But
Is it insulting me? I don't mind.
No, I insulted you earlier. I know, but that's not how that's how you want to be treated. That's not how everybody else wants to be treated. All right.
Look, I get off on it. Okay, insult me, guys.
Yeah. He loves it. All right. Just you give it all.
You should see what I do after reading them.
All right. Yeah.
I saw a super chat trying to insinuate that I was Hispanic when I'm actually not. I'm Asian, so there's that.
Yeah, there's no need for like those kind of comments on appearance, guys. I mean, you can call him a four-eyed twat because I am as well. That's cool, but race comments and stuff. There's no need for any of that shit.
Yeah, no, we're all on board there. Let's just carry on. They know who they are, and they can ask, like I say, a question in the chat. I'm not going to say you can't ask a question. Just do your best to be the best version of yourself, like your first date version of yourself. All right, let's do that. Even Lord, one before that. Awakening Mind says, the Bible and the globe are both lies, Craig. You think the Bible is false, yet you think the globe is true. Both are meant to keep you away from truth. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is the dude, by the guy that's just given that comment thinks that the sun teleports from one side of the earth and appears at the other side of the earth. And also doxed their parents when their parents kind of said that the earth wasn't flat and stuff. So anything they say has no value of any kind. And fuck you.
Any thoughts on the other side? Or you want to just carry on? It's
I don't
interesting.
know that person, so I'm not a flat earther. So there's
Okay.
that.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, so
Yes,
you don't
yes,
think,
good.
yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I was gonna say, so you
Please,
don't
all right,
think,
do me a favor. Tell the other the flat earthers that the Bible doesn't say the Earth is flat.
Yeah, the Bible doesn't say the Earth is flat.
well, you just opened the door to a whole lot of, anyway, there's gonna be some
Yeah.
people that are gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna debate this guy. All right, even Lord says, Craig is just saying, nah, like a flat earther.
Well, no, I'm not just saying nah. I'm asking for
Yes, you are.
evidence
No,
that
I'm just
there was nah. The only way that I can actually say nah is if evidence of some kind is presented for me to nah at, but unsubstantiated, hearsay is not something that should be taken into account as evidence. I'm not going to address evidence that I don't consider to be actual evidence. And as a man of science, I'm very aware of what evidence is and the criteria behind it. Nothing my opponent here presented today could be classed as evidence for his case of Christianity being true. He had assumptions and implications that he thinks are true with no evidence behind them. Thinking and feelings are not evidence.
all right, let's go on.
Yeah,
Even
just
oh,
real quick.
sure,
Yeah,
yeah. I
just
guess you can have a chance to respond. I'm sorry, I don't know. I was just trying to carry on. Go ahead.
yeah, like as far as like me presenting evidence, like I gave a standard definition of evidence that is used by standard philosophers of science. I accorded that with many various tests of historicity for the Gospels being eyewitness testimony. My opponent never addressed them besides just hand waved them away, and didn't give an alternative explanation. And yeah, here we are because of that.
I don't need to give an alternative explanation to an assumption.
All right, well, let's carry on.
Well, I asked that question,
Let's
and yeah, let's carry on. Let's carry on.
Yeah, we got a few more questions that might give you guys a bit more pause for thought. So, JSS Tiger says, "My thoughts: Jesus was a casual magician who needed a cult following, kind of like Joseph Smith." Well, sure. Do you want to make any commentary on that? Like, do you think that
Well,
Jesus
I mean,
was
it's a, hey,
potentially some other sort of enigmatic figure of this time, or
there's a lot of historical records that outside of the Bible that say Jesus existed. All right, I'm not disputing the fact that Jesus, as a human being, lived. I think he did, and I think probably he was a good dude that wanted to, try and help the world, and you know, maybe he was a magician as well, wanted the following. But we know how quickly cults can appear because let's face it, humans are fucking idiots.
right. Well, let's see if Apollos has any thoughts there. So, at
Yeah,
least
only
so.
that I don't see the mechanism behind like recreating a resurrection under a magic trick. So, um, yeah, there's that.
All right. Well, let's ask the next one. Even Lord says, Ryan, you need a raise after moderating this debate. You're going above and beyond in a tense environment. Yeah, you know what else is intense? Camping. Anyway, yeah, yeah. No, I am tired though. Even Apollo's asked when he first came in if I was
Hi,
sick.
tired.
'Cause
I'm dad. Wait,
I
sorry.
I had oh yeah, exactly. Dads are always tired, but yeah, I had 4 hours of singing rock and
Hey,
roll
it's
music,
Father's
and I
Day
had
tomorrow.
gas. That's right.
Is it Father's Day over there as well tomorrow?
It is. There's nothing more tense than that, though, Craig. Singing rock and roll for 4 hours with gas. Anyways, my poor
What's your
partner.
family doing for you for Father's Day? Anything planned?
I think I'm gonna probably be surprised. I don't know. I'll probably get
I
breakfast
think
in
my
bed
kids
and
have
all
brought me a
that
bag
stuff.
of sweets. So, great. I'm on a diet. Thanks.
I'll probably end up going over to the dog park for a bit, and if it's nice out, and hang out with the pup and throw the ball. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I might stop over at the
Sports
music
ball.
store. Yeah, but yeah, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. What fun. All right, Jay says Tiger. Let's carry on. Says, oh, actually, I should ask, are you a father as well, Apollos, or no?
I'm not.
No, no worries. It's less, yeah, okay, I'll tell you. Yeah, I had one, and I was like, you know what? This is fine. This will be all right. Maybe two would just be double the work, but two is actually
Yeah.
like 10 times the work.
I had two and I was four. I definitely couldn't have another.
You thought you were?
Wait, no, sorry. I don't eat my kids. Shush. What?
What is he on about? All right, let's
Never mind.
carry on. Batman Inc. says Matthew and John are both eyewitnesses and wrote their accounts, and Luke also collects eyewitness testimonies. Luke even writes as such. Craig, please tone it down. This is our Reddit atheist level behavior.
Now, I love how anyone that has an argument against Christianity goes, "Oh, yes, that's Reddit level." If I say the words "magic sky daddy," it triggers them so hard. That's Reddit level. If I point out that God is evil, that's Reddit level. I'm sorry, but saying that's Reddit level doesn't dismiss the arguments that I've made. And actually, those weren't even the real names of those people. Those names were added by like the church later on. And there's no evidence that they actually wrote those passages themselves. So yeah, carry on.
All right, all right. Let's. Did you have any thoughts there, Apollos? You want to carry on?
I already presented the indicators that the Gospels were written by the apostles attributed to them. So, yeah, my opponent just like hand waved it away and just said otherwise. So, no
All right.
evidence on his part.
So even Lord
Well,
said.
I just didn't accept the evidence.
So he said
Yeah.
the Hollock thing slash Ost. So 1940s Germany, atrocity, fascist government, we all know the story, isn't being tested and repeated. So did it really happen? Craig, do you
Ooh.
have positive proof for atheism?
Sorry, what was the question?
So
I
they're
missed
asking
it.
about the truth, within like a time capsule. So he's asking about fascist
Nice
1940s
one.
Germany isn't being tested and repeated. So did it really happen? So he's talking about being able to test something in a time capsule, is what I would gather.
Being able to test something in a time capsule. Well,
Like
you would test it.
how could you test that actually happened, that event historically?
Well, you can't test that something happened historically. You have to just believe eyewitness accounts. There's no evidence that things happen.
Oh, this is great. Holocaust denier right here.
I think
Oh no, I
Apollos
was
just,
absolutely 100% not a Holocaust denier. 100% not. But there's no evidence that
thanks for saying it, Apollos. I did so much work to not say. Anyway, go ahead. He was trying to work around it. Anyway, go ahead
no,
there.
absolutely not.
That was a great super chat, by the way.
I thought
Whoever
the
that
question was right. Read the question again because
So-
I may have missed the point.
So they're asking, yeah, so we'll just say that. So about the Holocaust isn't actually being tested and repeated. So did it really happen? Cat's out of the bag now. Start there.
Right, I missed the word Holocaust in the super chat, so I didn't.
Well, they're asking
understand
about
what
a
it was referring to.
historical event. So isn't being tested and repeated. So did it really happen?
Well, we just look at the evidence. It's a lot closer to what we are now. We actually have pictures and videos and things that can show that the Holocaust happened. Literal recordings of it and documentation by the Nazis that happened. There's no evidence like that of the times of Jesus, and the things that he did, and video evidence and stuff like that. So they're not really comparable. Just to be clear, Apollo, to call me a Holocaust denier is a bit fucking disgusting. I just wasn't listening to the question properly. Clearly not a fucking Holocaust denier. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll only briefly respond to apparently the Civil War and the Revolutionary War are also like not comparable wars that
Well,
happen
no,
in
they've
history
got
because
extreme
wait,
documentation around them as
no,
well.
no.
Hold on.
No,
One
well,
second.
I'm saying that they didn't have video evidence,
There's
so apparently
photos.
that fails. Okay, of the Revolutionary War.
Maybe not the Revolutionary War, but there's paintings of certain things that happened, and
There
there
are
is
paintings of Jesus.
extremely accurate and detailed documentation.
There you go.
There's no
That's your answer.
detailed, accurate documentation of specific dates and times and missions and people and that from the time of Jesus.
Yeah,
The
there are.
Revolutionary War,
But
yeah, we can actually
anyway,
find journals of officers'
anyway,
commands and
there are
orders
nautical
from
details
higher
and
up.
acts
So
of the
it's very
apostles.
different
There
comparing
are
the two of them.
rulers
Wait 1 second,
who
Craig.
were.
Give him
Sorry,
one
were you
second.
just
Give him
talking
his
over
space.
me as I was talking? Right, I understand.
Well, first of
That's
all,
fine.
no.
Let's try to have
Well,
that
it was
back and
my
forth.
So
turn.
you were
first
just
of all.
talking over me.
Well, let's
Right,
try to
okay.
have that
It
back
was
and
my turn
forth
to
if we
begin with,
can.
and you interrupted
You
me.
asked me a question, dude, and I was responding.
I never asked you a question. This is super chat. What are you talking about?
You asked me a question about
nev-
it, and then we were on having
When
a
did I?
conversation.
I
Oh my
never
goodness,
asked you a
you
question.
guys are great. All
Let's
right.
just
Are you
move on.
unaware
Wait,
how
I want to
conversations
give.
work?
I did want to give Apollos a chance to put his thoughts in there because obviously something that you said, and it happens normally in conversation. Somebody says somebody, and it triggers a thought, and there's a room for clarification. It's just normal. So let's just carry on. Apollos, your thoughts there.
Yeah, so apparently things that like can't be videotaped like immediately. So like whenever the sun is not being videotaped, I guess it just doesn't exist, or like he
No, that's a nice
and
straw
I
man my
understand that's
position
not.
because we can
Wait, wait,
test
wait,
and
wait, wait,
predict.
wait, wait.
Hold on,
Well,
hold on.
no,
Wait.
I'm going to respond because you just made a
No,
straw man of what I'm saying. We can actually
what?
make predictions of where the sun is going to be and test that in the future. A
All right.
bunch of friends of mine did that when they
And
went to
All
the
right,
you can
all right, all
Antarctic.
back
right.
project
You
it
did the
into the
quick.
past as
No,
You
well.
did the quick injection, so let's pass it back to
You can
Apollos.
back,
Let's have the
yeah.
conversation.
So you can back project it into the past as well. And as
that's
far as
not a
like
prediction.
yes, it is in a
Back
sense that
projecting into the past is not a
it's called
prediction of something
abduction.
that's
It's
going
called
to
abduction.
happen in
That's
the
why
future.
geology exists. That's
It's
why
not
like
a
models of evolutionary
prediction.
Hold
biology
on, Craig.
exists. Uh, anyway, like yeah, let's just move on. I
Jesus
already explained
Christ.
myself.
All right.
I
Just
think
want
he
to make sure
doesn't
that
understand the
everybody
difference between the
can.
past and the future.
I just want to make sure everybody can hear you. But I will say, Craig, your audio has definitely fixed itself. You're not getting cut off anymore, so people can actually hear the back and forth. As long as we can have the back and forth, with a too much, what would you say, objection. So the question carries on. Craig, do you have positive proof for atheism being truthful? Then they said, sorry, Ryan. That's okay, even Lord. So
No,
positive
I've
proof.
made this very clear many times. I can't disprove that there's a God. I can't disprove that Ryan is God. I can't disprove that in 50 years,
I
Ryan
am.
invents a time machine, goes back and starts the universe and puts physics in order. There's no way I can disprove that. There's no way of disproving some higher intelligence creating the universe. No, absolutely not. But there's no evidence that that is the case either. All we can do is look at the universe and go back in time to as far as the looking at the universe allows us to. To say we know what happened before or we know what created it is just arrogance because nobody knows and no one has the ability to know.
Oh man, old Ryle over here is gonna tickle that dust at the Big Bang. Oh yes,
I
I
just
am.
want
Set
to
it right
point
off.
out that he
All
talked
right.
about the past, so he confused the past with the future as well. So,
I absolutely did not because I didn't say you can make a prediction in the past.
but you said you no, yeah, you did. You said we can go back in time. Anyway, let's move
No,
on.
I didn't say we could go back in time.
We can or something to that effect. We can real roll the
Did
clip.
does
Anyway,
humor?
let's go.
Sorry, r/whoosh, my friend.
All right, carrying on. Even Lord, Craig, you are an entertaining debater, and I would love to see a debate between you and Daniel Kikachu. Would it be something you would be willing to do? I don't know.
Who is
Like,
that?
do you? He is. What would you say, guys? A Muslim apologist. He's been on the channel a lot. He was on yesterday with
I
James.
am
I haven't hosted
studying
him
some
yet.
of the
I want to.
I've been studying the scientific claims of the Quran.
Okay.
And I'm certainly up for a debate around what the Quran states as facts,
All right.
like
See,
sperm being made in the rib cage and shit like that.
I didn't know if that was a debate you'd be interested in. That's why I was kind of like, I don't know if that's your
I'd have to be
wheelhouse.
very specific about what I would debate in it because I'm not an expert on Islam in any way, shape, or form. But I have done quite a bit of studying on the scientific claims that the Quran and the Bible and other religious texts make.
All right, you got it. Let's carry on. Yeah, I tried to get Basil to tag me in the live chat. So, they asked another question. Okay, I think they took care of it on their own. Thank you so much there, Basil. And appreciate your understanding. Roken says, Craig, wouldn't you at least agree there's some eyewitness testimony as most historians accept Jesus' crucifixion as recorded in the Gospels? Now, I think he just did say a few minutes ago that he's not what do they call them, mythicists, or I think that's it.
I mean,
Haven't
there
heard that term in a
is
while.
outside of the Bible, from what my research shows, other accounts of Jesus' crucifixion, or at least crucifixion of someone that could be described as Jesus with the way that they're describing the actions that they did and the way that they were going against like the Jewish ruling parties and stuff. So I hold the position that I do think the crucifixion of Jesus happened, based on my research of what historical records are available. Does that mean that he was the Son of God and died for our sins and was resurrected? No. Crucifixions were a very typical punishment. You could be crucified from anything from adultery to stealing to taking too much water, to murder. Crucifixion happened to a lot of people back then. So I do think that if Jesus existed, he was likely crucified.
And none of that is in the future, so.
Agreed. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just looking at historical records and making
I'm
a
not saying that
deduction
you
from
said it
that.
was.
I think you
I'm just
missed the
pointing
entire
out.
point of
No,
what I'm saying. That every time
I'm
you
just
say
pointing
that's
out
not
the.
in the future, you
I'm
sound
pointing out the
stupid.
logical inconsistency in your position.
Yeah, there's no logical inconsistency, and the fact that you think there is shows that you are not a very intelligent person.
Ooh.
I can talk
Anyway,
about historical records and make a deduction myself from those, and that be outside the purview of the scientific method and predicting something in the future. They are different
yes.
things that can exist outside of each other.
Yeah, which is exactly what I was trying to explain to you earlier.
No, because you are saying hypothesis, which is a scientific term.
Oh, but I changed my use of
Yeah,
terminology
once I
not to refer
destroyed
to
you,
that.
even your blooming slide said hypothesis, so we know that's what you meant.
No, we don't. But anyway.
All right.
You wrote those words, but we don't know what you meant. Of course not. Trump level thinking.
Alrighty, you. Tina L says, not tiny, sorry. Tina L says, for Craig, prove Plato existed using the scientific method.
Well, science doesn't prove anything, so you wouldn't do that. And I'd never, I don't say that he definitely existed. I just look at historical records and say it's likely he did. Just like it's likely that Jesus existed. And if Jesus existed, it's likely he was crucified.
I was going to say, isn't Homer now considered like a group of people now? I'm not sure.
There is different reports about who Homer is. Again, all we have for these things are muddy historical records. So you can look at them and you can make an assumption and you can say, well, I think that that is the case. But that doesn't mean that I'm saying that that is 100%, a fact. Do I think Jesus existed? Yes, I do think he did. Do I think he was crucified? Yes. Do I have proof of that? 100%? No. I just look at what little historical records there are and come to an assumption. I might not be right.
All right. Well, let's ask the next question. Cindy Bonbury, this one's for you, Apollos. What do we know of the 500 witnesses to Christ? And witnesses in quotation marks. So they are.
Sorry, I muted myself.
No worries.
Yeah, we know that it ended up in the 1 Corinthians 15 creed, so we also know that it happened before Paul's conversion. We also know that Paul adds the addendum. Some are still alive, but some have also fallen asleep. Most of whom are alive, but some have fallen asleep, which implies that the audience of this creed that was delivered onto the 1 Corinthians 15 church could check that out if they were to travel back to Jerusalem. So yeah.
All right. Let's ask the next question, and we'll just keep carrying on. Basil Problem says, MDD, you like to debate big questions like whether women should have rights. Can you debate whether overweight people should also have rights? I don't know if there's anybody who wants to have that debate, but I'm sure, if there's somebody out there that's making that claim. And
of course, overweight people should have rights. I was a big fatty before. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with fat shaming because it fucking worked on me. Stop being fat.
I'm just saying.
Excuse.
I'm just saying that to have that debate is one thing. To make commentary about a speaker on screen is just that's different. And
I don't think any of us
that.
here are fat.
So.
I mean, looking at my friend here, I actually think he looks like he probably lifts. Am I right?
Yeah, I just lifted, worked on my back like 2 days ago. So
yeah, I can see from your shoulders there that you're clearly someone that goes to the gym. I don't think any of us are fat in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know why that would be directed at us.
I could use a little anyway. I just want to be able to
Right,
sit on the toilet without my legs going dead. All right.
How's your pull-up game? Because that's what I'm struggling with.
Your pull-out game? What the hell just happened? No, okay.
Pull-ups.
All right, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah. How
it's been a while since I've done pull-ups, but I did like these whenever you you take the bars and then you lift yourself up and try to lift your weight and then go back down and up.
All right.
But yeah, I can do a couple of those.
One thing I'm really struggling with is getting my pull-ups. I could do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey, eventually you'll be in full Pampers Cruisers there, buddy. All right. You'll graduate. It's all good. You just have to anyway. We go for a while. Good luck with the pull-ups. All right. Basil problem says, Apollos, you seem to be a big. I'm not sure what this means, so you guys got to forgive
Yeah,
me.
I saw that super chat.
What's this about? Help me out.
Yeah, so Bayes' theorem often talks about certain facts in relation to
Just a question.
certain
I didn't-
probabilities.
just one second. I didn't get to read the question yet. Is there something
Yeah, no
like?
worries.
Is there something like wrong with this question? I feel like they might be trying to bait me here because I shut them down. Or is this a fine thing to say? Because sometimes I've said things on screen. I'm just not understanding their question. here.
Apollos, you seem to be a big fan of Bayes. Please relate given E to P, E given H. That's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Some people make me say some pretty wild things on screen, but yeah, if that's all fine, then yeah, let's answer that one then.
Yeah, for sure. I am a pretty big fan of Bayesian statistics and the Bayesian theorem. The probability of the hypothesis given the evidence is the posterior hypothesis that you consider after you consider the evidence. The evidence given the hypothesis is basically the probability of that evidence being there given uh, the hypothesis being true. So it's just measuring the probability of two different things. So
Gotcha. I wouldn't understand anything about that. I'm a delinquent musician. But over to you, Craig. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's I like to call it beige maths because it's very dry, and statistics are great for trying to work out probabilities, but doesn't always represent reality in the same way that physics does. Yeah, I hated doing statistics.
All right. Fair enough. So I think we are just about the end of our super chats. We might be at the end of super chats. Dun, 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 dun.
Wait,
So
there was no insults for me.
there weren't any insults. Hey guys, this is your last chance.
Come on.
If you want to insult Craig, you better get it in now.
Look at the size of my nose, guys. Come on, you got to get something from that at least.
Oh man. Yeah, that's
No?
appalling.
Well, I was back swimming in the sea the other day, and people started shouting "shark."
Oh no.
I've got to do it myself. Come on.
Oh yeah. No. All right, let's
I mean,
just
look at
check.
Ryan's hair. You can insult that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't cut it in a while, but it's just how she goes. All right, my forehead's growing. Look, see,
That's a five head.
yeah, it's getting bigger every
Sniper's dream.
year.
You've been told to hold that thought all of your life.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna. Anyway, well, we could go on about this old billboard. over here
200
for a while.
terabytes of memory right there.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what? If you're gonna talk about my billboard, you go ahead and show them what you got going on over there, Captain. Whatever you call that.
What do you mean? I've just not done my hair today. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
I see that. All right, so which is true, atheism or Christianity? 37% in our poll said atheism is true. Now, obviously, there might be some problems with the framing of the question, but honestly, most people do understand, I'm sure, that it's more like, are you an atheist or are you a theist, who believes in Christianity? Yeah, even though maybe there's some miswording there, I think most of our audience got it. But thanks for that. 38% said atheism, 18% said neither. I think both are silly. And they have the popcorn bucket there. So they're just enjoying the show. And then 45% said Christianity is true, leading the poll.
let's go.
So that was...
I'll take that W.
Well done, bunch of Christians voting. Good job.
Well, to be fair, it is a representation of who's in the audience today. So, these it's a good way to keep an eye on how the demographics are shifting on the channel for sure. It's always fun to hear from our audience, and especially when they're being friendly.
So I only win the flat Earth debates, apparently, according to the polls.
That's true. All right. All right, let's go into those closing statements. I'm going to give you 1 minute, starting with you, Craig. 1 minute.
I don't think we had closing statements.
You don't want one? You don't want to say
Yeah,
anything?
I'm just going to say shit.
Yeah, sure. We can just have closing statements for like 1 minute or something.
No worries. All right, one minute, Craig, and don't just say shit and repeat. If you literally just sit there and go shit. All right, then. All right, I'll cut you off. All right, go ahead, Craig.
Oh, thank you guys for watching, and thank you for hosting, Ryan and James. I'm Craig FTFE. You can find me over on FTFE channel. On Monday, I will be debating Dr. Stephen Alonso at the Flat Earth University. That should be fun.
Sounds like
in
you
regards
guys are
to this
getting
debate,
freaky afterwards. Dating. You say anyway. Sorry.
in regards to this debate, there's no evidence that there's a God, and I can't disprove that a God exists. So can I say Christianity's true? No. Can I say atheism's true? No. But Christianity itself, if you look at the claims of the Bible, they can definitely be falsified. So is there a God? I don't know. But is the stories in the Bible true? Logic would say not. Over to you, Apollo.
Sorry, we got a super chat that came in from the Rabbit who said, "I will debate big people shouldn't have rights." Okay, well, I'm glad that you got that in there, Rabbit.
All right,
the
so
Rabbit.
does that mean that I gained rights when I lost weight?
I think according to the Rabbit, that might be true. I don't know. The Rabbit's going to have to maybe make some clarifications, but if you want, you can always reach out, moderndaydebate@gmail.com. Let us know that you want to have that debate. Like I said, we're definitely not opposed to having debates about subjects. Just,
I mean, I disagree with like things like, when fat people will think they should get 2 seats on a plane and stuff like that. In fact, I think they should probably pay for 2 seats on a plane because they use more fuel. But that's not, taking away their rights, is it?
All right. Let's see here. You had your 1 minute, so let's give it over to Apollos. Thanks, Apollos, for your patience. 1 minute on the floor. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Apollos Christian Apologetics. That's the name I go by online. You can find me over at my channel. Please do like and subscribe my content. Try to put out the most up-to-date apologetics research pertaining to the truthfulness of Christianity. Thank you, Ryan. That's right, Ryan, for hosting this debate. I know Craig was really feisty here, and to be honest, like I'm just gonna call it for what it is. You engage in bad faith and you're lock-eating. And were very slimy in your rhetoric, didn't really want to engage in the points that I presented. And yeah, so yeah, I gave evidence for Christianity, and he responded by saying that's not evidence, by using an arbitrary definition of evidence, that it has to be in the future. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad the way this I I do think that it wasn't that very fruitful of a discussion, but I am glad the way that it turned out in the end, considering the polls. But yeah, thank you all guys for watching, and at your boy Apollo signing out. Peace.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for you both being here, Craig and Apollos.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I will be very soon on another channel talking to someone for an after show. The link to that is going to be um, uh, on my YouTube channel, so you guys are more than welcome to watch that as well. So
Excellent. And speaking of which, Max, who has been a very loyal mod to Modern Day Debate, has his own little after show that he's been doing. We appreciate you there, MXXD, for all the support that you give us. So I'm going to pin the message there if you guys want to go hang out, the after show on Yerba Mate Talks. So thank you so much for all your help in the live chat. And yeah, if you guys are watching in our show right now, I would encourage you to head on over there, and you'll get a little after show as well. But yeah, thanks to both of our speakers. Thanks, Max, in the live chat. All of our mods. We appreciate you, and we will definitely catch you next time, Modern Day Debate. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Yeah, we appreciate it all. Till next time. Peace out.